everybody? Welcome to another episode of Purple Insider presented by FanDuel. Matthew Coller here, and not a lot has changed since the last time that we were on the air, but in about 15 minutes, Andrew Kramer of the Star Tribune is going to check in, and then Manny Hill will drop by for an hour as well, and we'll take questions, comments, thoughts, and reactions to not much that has gone on with the Minnesota Vikings so far. Now, you could make an argument that as a bunch of giant contracts are being handed out, many of which will not ultimately end up paying their dividends, that the Vikings being patient with this free agency may or may not turn out to be a good idea. And also, we got the sense that this was not going to be the most exciting day one of free agency, but that doesn't mean nothing happened, because around the NFL, there have been a lot of dominoes that have fallen that we're going to dive into. And I have made a list of the top remaining free agents. And well, as we speak, you never know. There could be some that sign as we're talking. So if that happens, then we'll, I guess, just cross them off the list. So I'm going to get the list out now of the best players that I think would fit for the Minnesota Vikings that are still remaining on the board. And then we'll see what happens over the next couple of hours. And we'll talk about what our expectations are here going forward. And we'll get into some of the biggest dominoes that have fallen around the league. So we'll jump right into my list. Here we go. The top remaining free agents that I think would make at least some sense for the Minnesota Vikings. Going to start off at the wide receiver position with Jauan Jennings from the San Francisco 49ers. I do think that Jennings will probably get more money than the Vikings want to give out for a wide receiver 3. I also think that he is likely looking for a job with a team that does not already have a number 1 and 2 wide receiver, but because he has mostly throughout his career had a wide receiver 3 job, I put Jauan Jennings at the top. Calvin Austin III is my number 2 here for the Pittsburgh Steelers. The projected contracts, at least from Daniel Popper of The Athletic, who's doing their free agency coverage, was pretty reasonable for Calvin Austin. He played with Aaron Rodgers last year, is more of a depth wide receiver who can step up if he needs to. So I put him on the list there. Jaquan Brisker, again, these are some guys at the top of my list that I do expect to end up getting a little bit more money than the Vikings want to hand out, but it's not a guarantee that the Vikings won't give out any money to anyone ever, but maybe are rather letting the dust settle a little bit and playing it safer, and also might need to still find out some things, like is Harrison Smith coming back? Brisker, I do think will probably be a little too expensive, but what tends to happen a lot is the guys who make it through the first day or two of free agency, those prices go down quite a bit. And, I think that for guys like Jennings and Austin and Brisker, they might end up being a decent deal. So I put them on the list as not impossible for the Vikings to get. Brisker, as we know, is an impact player. He has had some injuries with Chicago, but a blitzing type of safety, high IQ safety, and Chicago doesn't seem like they are bringing him back. So let's see. Next on the list is Deshaun Hand, a run-stuffing, strong defensive tackle that isn't expected to rake in a lot of cash. But when you look at where the Vikings' defensive line is right now, you've got Jalen Redmond and Levi Drake Rodriguez, and then Ty Ingram Dawkins and Elijah Williams. Ingram Dawkins played a little bit last year. Williams didn't play a whole heck of a lot. They could use a veteran player to come in and help them stuff the run. And I do not think that Hand is going to get a huge contract. However, I got to say, I was a little surprised that Khyiris Tonga got $7 million per year on the open market from the Kansas City Chiefs. So I guess anybody could potentially end up getting, paid here. So Deshaun Hand is next on the list. Then Nick Cross, the safety from the Colts, as Seth mentions, on the younger side, and still could, that's a position where guys can get better and better if they are in the safety market. The expectations aren't super high or through the roof of what Cross is going to get paid. Another guy who could play in the box, pass rushing type of safety, on the tougher, good tackler type of side. Rachaad White is my favorite option for the Vikings in terms of running back. Earlier it was mentioned that they were potentially in on Travis Etienne, which means that they're not maybe doing nothing. They might be waiting for free agency to come to them rather than just running out and signing everything that moves like they kind of did last year. And also, some of the free agency moves that happened last year, they didn't happen right away. There were a few that happened in later on in the evening and then even into the next couple of days. Hargrave took a couple days later, I think, before he ended up signing. So Rachaad White is a solid all-around running back, not by any means a give him the football and he's going to run for 80 yards like Bo Jackson and Tecmo Bowl, but is an all-around type of talent where he can catch the ball, he can block if he's needed to, and then he's going to average over 4 yards a carry, and I think in the right circumstances could be a very good 1A to Jordan Mason depending on the circumstance. The prices for running backs have been very high so far, but there might be a steep drop-off, and we're going to look at all the signings a little bit later, kind of talk about the prices and some of the trends and things like that, and how, look, the worst teams are the ones that are spending all the money. The Raiders are going absolutely berserk, the Jets, the Titans, these teams are just going crazy in free agency, and, maybe there's a little bit of, all right, if those teams are going to go wild and overspend, then let's wait and be a little more methodical about it. I don't blame them if that is the plan. But the running backs got paid the first wave, big money. ETN and especially Kenneth Walker got a huge deal. But then the second level of running backs, not as much. I saw Rico Dowdle sign, but I didn't see exactly what the contract was. But the next level of running backs, it seemed like there was a pretty big dip there. So I'll be curious to see what Rachaad White ends up getting. Luke Fortner, the center from the New Orleans Saints. We talked about center a little earlier in the day, and I'm not convinced that the Vikings are going to put a lot of assets into center, but if they are, other than maybe a third-round draft pick, if they are, Luke Fortner would be the guy to do it. Was very solid for New Orleans at that position last year. I will throw out Caden Ellis from the Atlanta Falcons, even though the Vikings brought back Eric Wilson, because he's kind of like Eric Wilson, a very good blitzer, an all-around type of player. And if he slips through the cracks, I don't expect this deal to happen because they are pretty set at linebacker. But this is a team that loves to rotate. He could play on the outside. He could play on the inside. And I just think he would be a great fit for Brian Flores. Alohi Gilman has gotten more run on this show than probably any other show he has ever, been talked about on for the teams that he's played for. I think he's good. He played for the Los Angeles Chargers, the Baltimore Ravens, and if you are looking for someone who is not going to get a huge deal, but also could have a pretty solid impact, then Alohi Gilman, I think, is up there. You guys are mentioning that Johnny Munt has been released. I think that's where Kevin O'Connell looks up to the sky and just sees a Johnny Munt-shaped moon up there like Batman, in the light. That's Johnny Munt's signal up there. He should be a Viking before the end of the day. KOC really does like himself some Johnny Munt, but I think they're pretty good at tight end at the moment. So Gilman is on my list. Logan Hall is still out there, defensive tackle from Tampa Bay, who has been good in terms of stopping the run with some upside as a pass rusher. He's been improving over the years, and I think he could get better at that. Jalen Hawkins was excellent as a safety for the New England Patriots last year en route to the Super Bowl. Darnell Mooney has not been a great wide receiver since he had that little run in Chicago, but was an effective wide receiver and feels like a guy that could totally slide under the radar and still be available in like a week. Sebastian Joseph Day, former Los Angeles Ram, Tennessee Titan, defensive tackle, always kind of comes on the cheap. And some of these guys like Joseph Day, they don't get 50 pressures, but they get like 20 or 25, and they don't play 800 snaps, but they play 500, and they're worth the signing. Emmanuel Wilson, running back from Green Bay, we saw him play last year. And then Marquise Brown, who doesn't stay healthy very often and is not the player that he once was, but if you are rolling the dice for wide receivers, then he would be the type of guy that you might be looking at, Marquise Brown. So that's my list of top remaining free agents, and I think that the Vikings would not have any of these guys turn into total game changers or reshape the face of the franchise or something like that. But they might, at each of these positions, be somebody that solidifies a spot and gives you average play. And I've always thought this about free agency and just in general is sometimes when a guy will leave a team, there will be like, oh, well, he wasn't a game changer anyway. He was just average. But the difference between bad and average is very big. Being bad at a position in the NFL can kill you, where being average, some of the time you can paper over if you've got a lot of talent around there. So there's some options there. I'm curious what you guys think should be the number one target for them. I mean, you don't even have to give a player. There's my list. If you have players that you like, feel free to throw them out there. But just in terms of a free agent need, where you'd like to see them deal with some of their problems now, rather than wait all the way until the draft. And the Vikings officially got the comp pick that we all knew that they were going to get for Sam Darnold, and they get just one comp pick this year, which is why we don't generally talk a lot about it on the show, is because they announce it and, it'll usually be just 1 or 0 for the Vikings. So maybe if they turn into one of those teams that gets a bunch of comp picks, it'll be different. But they did get officially announced an extra 3rd round pick today. And as far as the moves that they've made, there hasn't been a lot. There's a depth cornerback in James Pierre who has very nice numbers in a small sample and is going to be 30 years old. And then they're keeping their guys. And they've really just stuck to the plan that they laid out at the NFL Combine, which is Rob Brzezinski said, we're not going to restructure everything that moves. Obviously, they have to get cap compliant, and then they are going to keep their core. And I think when it comes to the players who left, there is a little bit, if Harrison Smith ends up retiring, which we don't know what's going to happen there yet. If Harrison Smith ends up retiring, then you are going to look around the roster and go, that's quite a few openings from last year, because you have 2 defensive tackle spots, starting safety spot that's incredibly vital to this defense. And on the offensive side, there's a running back spot, there's a center, there's a wide receiver 3 that we know they like to use quite a bit. And of course, they're a team that does use multiple tight ends, but they don't use them all the time. I think that they would prefer to use a lot of 11 personnel. So there is construction to be done, even if day one, because I know I've already seen on the interwebs and in the comment section, like, this is pretty disappointing that they haven't at least been involved. And I don't disagree with you that I thought that there might be a little bit more action, but there's going to have to be some more action for the Vikings. Just when you look around at the entire roster, they can't go into the draft where they're at right now. They will have to start looking at, other options and players. So let's get into the chat here, and we'll get Andrew Kramer should be coming up shortly on the show from the Star Tribune. Oh, that's the wrong thing. There we go. So let's see what you guys think. Oops, 61 wants Harrison Smith back for another year. Brian Cook did sign with the Bengals. He was a guy that I was interested in. I thought that Cook, an excellent tackler, and I think a good all-around talent on the younger side. The Bengals end up landing him. As far as Harrison Smith goes, I kind of expected that his decision would be made by now, and I wouldn't be terribly shocked if that comes fairly soon, that, he'll make that announcement, or they'll work out another deal for 1 more year. I mean, if you're Harrison Smith, it has to be entirely on just how you feel from a physical perspective, because if he feels like physically that he can do it, then I think then he should come back and do it. And they would want to bring him back for 1 more year. Now, the money is an issue, though. In the past, especially last year, they gave him a very favorable deal because they could, and they were in a cap spot where they could. Now they're not, and they have to be a little more, a little bit more strict with how much they're willing to spend if he wants to come back and play again. Now, I know that they want him to be a Viking for life, and he was huge for the defense down the stretch, and if that inspired him to come back and play, no problem with that. And having a defensive coordinator on the field at all times is very, very valuable. It's just maybe the question of how much is that ultimately going to be worth. So let's get Andrew Kramer onto the show here. Give me 1 second to bring Andrew in. But so I'm very curious, though, because I would have thought that his decision would have been made by now, and we would know if we should be talking about safeties or not. All right, Andrew Kramer, Star Tribune. What is up, my friend? How are you?
Hey, Matt, I'm doing well. How about you?
Well, just kind of hanging out, waiting for stuff to
Right.
happen. You know, the thing about today in the free agency for the Vikings is that it is very interesting with the number of questions that exist. But I think what I thought was that we would get some answers, and it feels like we have no more answers to all of the questions that we would have had going into free agency. So what has been, as you've sat in front of your computer, what has been your biggest question that you have about like what they're going to do, what's next, like what is going on with this team and the roster build? Because there's a lot of space on this roster to still be managed.
There is, and there's not a whole lot of money to fill those spaces, certainly, which is why I think we're seeing them slow play it the way they are. The quarterback domino is going to be the first one to fall. The biggest question I've still got about this team is obviously who's going to fill that spot. But assuming it's going to be one of these guys with the offset language in their contract that comes on minimum deal, it's going to be a situation where how frugally can they fill these holes? Who's going to start at running back for them? Who's going to be starting of whichever quarterback it's going to be? The big questions too around quarterback: how much do they shift the offense like they have? If it's Kyler Murray, it might take a drastic change. So those are all questions I've got, certainly. But short term, right now, it's no surprise they started off slowly with James Pierre coming across from Pittsburgh. They're going to be picky, even if reportedly they're in on Travis Etienne the way that they were today. It's not a shock they couldn't close that deal when it gets up to $13 million, the way that he got paid. So they cut Aaron Jones, or are going to, at $10 million for a reason. And I think fans should just breathe a little bit, because those questions and answers, or excuse me, those answers are not going to come as fast as we want them to.
So I don't want to sound like I'm trying to just spin this in a way that makes it sound better than it is when it comes to their free agent situation. But, you know, I also think that when you look at their spending for last year, and there was a lot of spending that was at the highest dollar, right? Like they didn't last year get very many good deals,
Yep.
and they did not wait and were not all that patient with letting free agency play out and letting other teams spend the big money. They were the team that was like the Raiders are this year or the Jets are this year, where they ran into free agency or they kept every single player that they wanted to keep. Is it possible for them, knowing that so much of the board has come off already, is it possible for them to make shrewd moves that ultimately end up working out better than the ones that would have been the most exciting for podcasting and writing purposes?
Yeah, absolutely they can. Absolutely. Oftentimes the winners of free agency do not end up being, very certainly. So absolutely they can. I think this stuff gets overblown when you see Jalen Phillips go for 30 million a year. You see Wandale Robinson go for 19 million a year. A lot of these contracts are just getting so bloated. And yeah, the Vikings were one of the free agency winners a year ago, and look where it got them. So absolutely, yes, they're still available. One of the guys that jumps out to me is the Packer cast off at center, Elgin Jenkins. Safety Nick Cross from the Colts would be an excellent addition to this group. There's just a ton of guys that are still out there that are going to eventually get those mid, maybe even lower upper level tier, the kind of 1B contracts, not 1A contracts. Those guys are all going to come. And again, it's tough to sit here and wait when the buildup is there and you see so many guys fly off. But certainly the top performers in the NFL are not necessarily the guys that sign the first day of free agency
Andrew, you're breaking up a little
every
bit.
year.
You're breaking up a little bit on me. Would you mind popping out and then popping back in real
Sure.
quick? Because you're kind of every third word there. But I caught it. I caught what he was saying. And I tend to agree with it because we can't talk out of both sides of our mouth. I mean, it's really exciting to be the even on the media side here when the team is going crazy and the fans are getting excited and everything else when they're making a bunch of big moves. I mean, that's always one of the most fun times of the year. And I know all of you were spending as much time as you possibly could today refreshing who's going where, who's signing with what team, who are the Vikings going to get, is there going to be a quarterback resolution? And that's all phenomenal stuff for the content. But oftentimes, if you can be the team that waits and that is a little more on the patient side, oftentimes you can have that succeed for you. But, Andrew, Jonathan Grenard, I feel like, is a real linchpin to how I feel about what they're going to do this entire offseason, because the moves that they've made so far were all kind of obvious. Like the defensive tackles were overpaid and I didn't think fit the best for them. So you could see why you'd move on. Keeping TJ Hawkinson, keeping Eric Wilson. This is all stuff we would have projected. Trading Jonathan Grenard is something that I didn't really expect. And trading Jonathan Grenard, I feel like if they're going to do it, they have not. If you're just tuning in, they have not, but it's been rumored for several days now. I feel like that would be a much more of a shift toward wanting to focus on the future as opposed to, hey, we're going to get every bit out of this team that we can and this core.
Yeah, and honestly, when it comes to Grenard, that's a spot where he's reportedly asking for a pay raise. That puts the Vikings in a bind. When you see Jalen Phillips go for $30 million at the ceiling, that's an incredible amount of money for a guy who has not had the type of years that Jonathan Grenard has had, double-digit sack seasons. So these guys flying off the charts in terms of the money that they're making at edge rusher. So Grenard is putting the team a little bit in a bind. He's favors, certainly, by asking for more money right now. Why should he? He's 29 years old. He's going to be entering the last season he has before he turns 30. And he's coming off a pretty big injury that cost him playing time and could cost him money if it happened to have been a contract year. So this is just a tough spot for the Vikings. It's a tough spot for him because he wants his, and the Vikings aren't in a position to be giving out much more money than they've already been pouring over the bar to every player that wanted it recently. So I understand why they're at where they're at with him. I don't think they want to trade him by any account. It doesn't seem that that's the case, but they also don't seem to want to pay him what he's other than see what the offers are. If you're happy with one, take it. If not, you have to tell John, sorry, but we might just need to see you out and then take care of you on the back end of this deal.
Yeah. And I think that's a tough place to be, because if you're Jonathan Grenard and you're looking around the NFL and you're seeing guys who are at very least in a similar bucket as you, now earning a lot more money, and we could have anticipated this, that guys who are similar in terms of their production over the last few years now getting a lot more in free agency, because as opposed to a couple years ago, he was kind of an ascending player that was interesting and they grabbed onto. And then it was like, oh, okay, he's not just somebody who kind of popped in Houston. He's a legitimate star. At the same time, he's not of the level of star of a Max Crosby. He's not at the same level of a star of a Nick Bosa or a Micah Parsons. So where do you find the medium if he is kind of sticking to his guns, wanting to get a new contract, but you don't really want to do it? It's a bit of a complicated situation. What do you think, though? Let me shift to the backfield, because clearly from the hires on the coaching staff, they want to run the ball better. Like, KOC sees your tweets, everybody. He knows that you think that he can't run the ball well enough. And I think it's also true that it has not been a real weapon for them being able to run the football at any point in KOC's tenure here. So they were going after ETN. That tells us that there's interest, but the running backs have mostly come off the board here. do you look to the draft? I saw Daniel Jeremiah floating. Hey, what if they traded up to get, Jeremiah Love, which seems like the antithesis of what they're actually trying to do here and think toward the future. But how do you get a backfield that can actually be a difference maker? Because whether it's Kyler or Kirk or Geno, they're not going to be able to do it themselves.
Yeah, it's a tough spot because you need a veteran, and when you lose your last two or your best two pass protectors from that backfield, and Aaron Jones and C.J. Ham in the same offseason, replacing that person or those people with rookies or a
Oh,
rookie is just need a top pick to come in here and make that kind of difference. So to me, that's where it's going to come from, is that a veteran addition. And where are those guys? Like you said, this is not a great free agent running back class. Certainly not like what we saw the last couple years. So I don't know if it's Rashad White, if it's Michael Carter. There's enough spread kind of option pass guys that could come in and give you a little bit of a burst, some speed. But where are you getting that pass protection that they covet so much? To me, that's going to be the biggest question mark. And I don't think you can get that from a rookie, and certainly you're not going to get that from, you're not going to get that from a young guy coming in. We've seen that struggle too often.
yeah, that's the tough part because when I look at the guys who were exceptional in pass protection, ETN was really the one that stood out, but then also Tyler Algier, and he ends up with the Arizona Cardinals. He may have jumped the gun a little bit. I feel like he did not get a huge paycheck, and he went to the Cardinals, whose quarterback is now going to be either Jacoby Brissett or Gardner Minshew. I guess he'll get the ball, but I was just really surprised that he didn't try to aim for more of a bigger role with a better team. So now there's only a couple of guys left on the board who even have any type of experience in the backfield. That does shift me, Andrew, a little bit more toward the draft.
Yeah, and that's just it. That's where you get speed. That's where you get the kind of game breaking stuff they look for. And with Frank Smith coming in, wanting to run more of the wide zone, presumably from what he's done in the past with Miami and San Francisco, you would assume that's kind of what they're going to approach. Raheem Mostert is still out there somehow. And I would assume that maybe he's a guy that might be a fit considering his experience, but he's not going to be a 16, 17 gig. And maybe that's what they have to fall back on, Matt. Maybe they have to fall back on, look, we're not going to get the workhorse guy we wanted when we had Aaron Jones, when we had Dalvin Cook. Maybe they just need to fall back on finding what works in a committee, finding the schemes that your offensive line can actually run to do all those things that coalesce into a strong running game that, as you mentioned, has been such a struggle for offense so far. So maybe it's not going to be this one person solution. Maybe it's going to have to be kind of a committee that includes a veteran like we talk about, scrap heap veteran, but then also a rookie coming in here with Jordan Mason.
Since our connection is a little bit of a struggle here as well, let me just ask you one more thing and just get your opinion, because today it was a little bit odd with Tua being released by the Miami Dolphins. And then he's going to get, at least from what was reported, a June 1st designation. But by the end of the day, he's an Atlanta Falcon. So, I mean, even though there's timing with all of this stuff, with Wednesday is when they can officially release Kyler Murray and so forth. And I think the same goes for Kirk and Geno Smith. I mean, it seems like there could be plenty of discussion going on. I don't know if there's a difference between what happened with Tua and what is going on with those guys being released either, but it seems like at any time Kyler could come out, or his agent or someone. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's tampering issues behind the scenes, but doesn't it feel like, wait, how did Tua just become an Atlanta Falcon? So what do you think the timeline is here for a decision at quarterback?
Yeah, my understanding is that because the Dolphins announced it, because they announced that it's going to be a June 1st, post June 1st designation release with Tua, that he's free to negotiate with other teams, that he's treated like anybody else. But because Kyler has guaranteed money beyond this upcoming year, he pulled after the new league year begins. That's at least my understanding of it. I'm kind of playing a doctor on television a little bit, but that's at least how I understand it. And that's why Kyler Murray, even according to Over the Cap, which does a great job, Jason Fitzgerald doing this stuff, he wrote that after 3 p.m. on Wednesday because of that guaranteed money in his deal.
Okay, so we'll have to be near our computers at that point. Is that your pick for the Vikings? Do you think that's what they're going to do?
I think it is at this point because of the offset money, because of the just what seem like not other great options for Kyler at this is Atlanta, just because of the offense, where you want to go, but have they shown the ability to rehabilitate a quarterback and be the best fit for you? I don't think so. I think you got to look back at Sam Darnold. You look back at what Minnesota has done and Kevin O'Connell have done with a veteran quarterback before. And I think if you're Kyler, and this is going to fall on his decision, why I think the Vikings go that route, because we've talked about it a lot. It's the best option. It's the best upside. It's the best, not only short-term option. Hey, what if you get surprised and it's somehow a long-term option for you as well? So, yeah, Kyler.
All right, Andrew. Well, I caught 90% of that. So thank you for popping on. We'll have to work on that for next time. We're much better in person. That's the doing the hardcore previews. We're definitely much better in person. But no, thank you for your time, sir. I agree that Kyler is the option that makes the most sense. But with the NFL, you never really know. And I think if you're Pittsburgh, you're just getting another receiver and maybe being like, do you like that? Is that what you want? Do you want another receiver, Kyler? Because the options in Pittsburgh are no better than they are here. So thank you for your time, sir. And we'll talk to you again soon. Most of Andrew Kramer there. It's internet, man. But look, so when it comes to the quarterback decision, clearly, if you could make it out there, Andrew said that Wednesday at 3:00 is the time that we'll all be watching for if Kyler Murray is going to become a Minnesota Viking. I just wondered if it would kind of sneak out there, but that is the difference. Because I was curious about that earlier when Tua, like, okay, they've already announced that he's gone and now he's an Atlanta Falcon, but the fact that that domino has fallen. Now you have Malik Willis off the board. You have, not that I thought Tua was an option, but you have Atlanta off the board for competition. And you have a report that Geno Smith is most likely to go to the New York Jets, which you could say, why the Jets? But he would have a chance to be the starter with the New York Jets as opposed to in a competition with JJ McCarthy. So that makes sense. And I appreciate Andrew clarifying that. And as far as the Jonathan Grenard thing goes, I mean, that is, I think, an entire swing type of player to how I feel about the offseason. Because if they don't trade Jonathan Grenard, I'm going to go into next year thinking this team should be good and competitive. And when we go around the division, the Lions got a center, Cade Mays, who I think is a pretty good football player, but he's not Frank Ragnow. And they've got other stuff to solve, left tackle. They've got a new offensive coordinator coming in. Their defense still needs pass rush. They didn't get Max Crosby either. Every one of these teams, their medias and their fan bases are also talking about flawed quarterbacks with issues on offensive line or issues in the secondary or issues on the defensive line. And if we go roster for roster, if it's Kyler Murray and his best season is not that different from Jordan Love's best season, it's not that different from Jared Goff's. And I would even say this for Geno Smith too, or I mean, Kirk is a harder one to say this about because he's got an Achilles injury that he never truly fully got back to 100%. But even 90% of Kirk Cousins is probably not as good as Goff and Caleb Williams and Love. But at least with Geno Smith and Kyler Murray, they've played at least in the ballpark of those guys before. And then you have a good supporting cast, the best defensive coordinator in the game, and a defense that is going to be a little bit rebuilt, but it's kind of been rebuilt every year. And we didn't think it was going to be great in 2024. I remember talking about how, top 10 is probably a little ambitious. And then they squeezed the most blood out of the stone that they possibly could in 2024 and really in 2023 when they were an average defense, which was a massive jump compared to where they were when Brian Flores got there. So there should be some confidence that Flores can get the most out of whatever group that he's going to end up throwing out there. And then you kind of roll the ball out and see what happens. I think Chicago should get some benefit of the doubt, even if they had to win a lot of close games. And Green Bay was 9-3-1 when Micah Parsons got hurt. So him coming back, but he's coming back with a lot less around him than he did before, unless Green Bay's got some other moves. But the fact that Eningbare left and the fact that they traded Rashawn Gary, like they've got a lot of question marks there too. So, and still, how are the Detroit Lions outside of Aiden Hutchinson rushing the passer? What's their answer? None of these teams did huge stuff that would make you go, okay, well, now they are the clear head above water, everybody else. I think with Kyler Murray or Geno Smith in the mix, but especially Kyler because he's in his prime and does not get sacked at the same rate as Geno Smith, would put them right in the discussion. Let's go back to you guys in the chat, and we'll carry on until Manny Hill is expected to pop in shortly within the next 10, 15 minutes or so. Who is Josh Johnson? Did Josh Johnson sign here? Josh Johnson is one of the great journeymen of all time. He's played for like 15 different teams. So, Wednesday. Yeah, we'll definitely do a live show on Wednesday to break it all down. Oh, the Vikings. So the Vikings are signing. Is that actually happening? That they're signing Josh Johnson? Okay. I guess I'm going to have to go confirm that that's happening. And look, hey, in the chat, if you don't like my takes on JJ McCarthy, then don't watch. It's very simple. And I'm perfectly comfortable with that. So you don't have to waste your time if you don't want to, if you are not interested in those opinions. So don't waste everyone else's time by coming in here and crying about it. I'm just confirming here because you guys could be trolling me with Josh Johnson, knowing how much I like Josh Johnson. Because he's been with so many different teams. How could you not? I'm not seeing this. Are you guys messing with me? You're not allowed to mess around on free agency day in the chat. That's like against the rules. But I do think that if the Vikings are going to sign Kyler Murray, that they could use another veteran quarterback as well. So let me get back to your takes. But the question is really, yeah, I mean, even if don't mess with me with a journeyman quarterback that I love, Josh Johnson. He's been with every team except the Vikings, it feels like. I would love to have him on the team and ask him questions about the 47 different teams he's played for. Yeah, so okay. That's all right. Don't stop trolling. Yeah, I mean, seriously. If you're going to troll, don't do that. Doomer KO says first and 2027 second for Jeremiah Love. So you're talking about the idea that Daniel Jeremiah dropped earlier today to move up in the draft from 18 into the first round or into the top 10 to draft Jeremiah Love. Now, if we were talking about just from the perspective of how fun this could be, yes, the answer would be absolutely yes. Give away that 2027 second round pick. Get up there, get Jeremiah Love, and pair him with Justin Jefferson, and you've got something crazy on your hands around Kyler Murray, who is, by the way, one of the most exciting playmaking quarterbacks in the league, even though sometimes he is not given that level of respect from the chat, but it is true. So if you had a playmaking quarterback, an insanely gifted young running back, and the best receiver in the game, yeah, you're going to be one of the most fun offenses. Is that the proper use of the Vikings draft capital, though? That would be a lot harder to argue. The answer is yes. If they're thinking about trading away Jonathan Grenard, if they're thinking about, defensive tackles future or cornerbacks future, because Isaiah Rodgers is a free agent after this year. Look what the corners got. I know that he's not comparable to Trent McDuffie, but the corners got freaking paid in free agency today. So, Rodgers, you got to start thinking down the road as much as just thinking about right now. A cornerback makes a lot of sense. The safety position makes a lot of sense. You have a wide receiver makes a lot of sense. So trading up that much, the 18th pick and a next year's second, just for one running back who look, I mean, he looks amazing, but there's no guarantees in the NFL. If you do it for a running back and it blows up in your face, I mean, you are in deep, deep trouble. But as far as entertainment value, that would be really, really fun. That would be really, really fun. If he slips, now that would be something that if he slips, maybe they're referring to Johnny Munt instead of Josh Johnson. Yes. If he slides in the draft, there is a certain number that Jeremiah Love could get to where you would say yes. Because when I look at what's available still in the backfield, I like the idea of Rachaad White, and Emmanuel Wilson, as we saw, can play a little as he did for the Packers, but you're not talking about anything game-changing. And the Vikings have not had a game-changing running back since really 2020 Dalvin Cook. The early part of the year in 2021, or 22, no, 21 he was still pretty good, and then he got hurt. He hurt his ankle against Arizona and never really had the same burst after that. Early part of 2022, there was some juice in the tank there from Dalvin Cook, but not truly special. Not any single time they give this man the football, he could be going 80 yards. That really ended in 2020, and that's running backs, right? And that's why it would be extremely dangerous to try to trade up for Jeremiah Love, because even somebody as freakishly talented as Dalvin Cook, who probably is a first-round draft pick, had it been a different year and had he not had off-field concerns, if Jeremiah Love turns out to be Dalvin Cook, then he's a Pro Bowl, awesome football player. But even then, you could look at Cook and go, was it worth it? He was banged up a lot. He was super exciting when he was great, but he plays 4 games in 2017. He plays a handful of games injured in 2018. And then 19, he's incredible. 20, he's incredible. And after that, it was a little here and a little there. That's the worry about running backs as a long-term investment. As a short-term investment, you could have a really, really fun offense. And, you can look at Bijan, you can look at Jahmyr Gibbs and say, those guys have an incredible impact on their offense. I would say that it's worth it for Jeremiah Love if he slides, but not if you're going to be asking to trade that much up. Young Cringe says, watch the Lions draft Jeremiah Love to replace Montgomery. I don't think they'd be doing that with Jahmyr Gibbs there, but I think that they will get somebody. Jesse, why did Minnesota not give up a 7th for Minkah Fitzpatrick? That's what the Jets got him for. Yeah, I don't know what his contract situation is, but with every free agent that we talk about, every trade option, anyone that we say, why didn't they get that guy? Money is usually the answer to that question. So I don't know what Minkah's situation is with money, but also he's a little bit on the older side. I guess Flores would have some familiarity with him. I don't know that. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the explanation would be other than they must feel like they have an option at safety, or maybe he's not a great fit. I mean, if he only got a 7th in return, he also might not be the player that he used to be. And I think what you want if you're the Vikings is you want to look for players who are on the rise. You want to look for players who are ascending and who are, as mentioned earlier, that Nick Cross is 24. I think if you're signing free agents, you're not looking for guys that are on the other side of the hill. And even if you're trading a small amount of draft capital, and even if it's not the most expensive thing in the world, I just don't think that that's what you're looking for. You're looking for players who might be able to be with you over multiple seasons. And Fitzpatrick has just not been the same player that he was early in his career. Reminds me of Jamal Adams a little bit, who was so good early on and then just faded and was not worth it. He was traded for a 1st-round pick at one point, Jamal Adams, and then just faded. So it does happen. Dennis says thoughts about Vikings moving up and for Love or a comparable player of need. So when it comes to everything, there's a price tag. And moving up in the moment always feels very, very good. But it's just often hard to justify. And these things have been looked at over the years. These things have been studied of how often does it work to move up? Now, if there are limits to that, if we're talking about the Texans moving up to get Will Anderson, yeah, I'm going to say they don't have too many regrets about moving up to get Will Anderson. But do the Vikings have regrets to move up to get Dallas Turner? As much as Turner has been good recently, and I think can continue to ascend, where he'd have to get to justify the move up is he has to get to greatness. He has to get to top 15, top 20 rushers in the league to justify the draft capital that's given up. So that's the same sort of story with someone like Jeremiah Love, where if you're going to trade up, then you gotta get, like, he's got to be the best running back in the league. He's got to be a top 5 type of running back if you're going to move that much, because the gap between the 12th best running back and the 20th is not very much. So you would have to get incredible performance out of him. Maybe you can, but then there's also the issue of long-term rookie contract. How much do you pay him at the end of the road? Usually the rookie contract is the best at where running backs are, like in their careers, is usually that first contract these days. And then are you going to pay him? I mean, because you got to think long-term if you're the Vikings, not just about what's going to help you next year. It really is unfortunate that there's just so few other good running back prospects that are going to be available other than Jeremiah Love. We'll bring in Manny Hill here in just a second. But I wanted to mention, Baching said, Love isn't slipping and under no circumstances should we trade up. We have holes everywhere. I think that's a very sensible take. That's a very sensible take. So, and I'm not down on Dallas Turner. Dallas Turner and what he did last year was exceptional in the second half, but only in the second half was he really that great. And that's 1/2 of 2 years for, they traded away a lot of draft capital in order to get him. So I mean, I like that Daniel Jeremiah is getting excited about that idea. And if they do it, we'll have a lot of fun on draft night. That's for sure. But I'm not sure that that's exactly the best possible move. All right. Now we bring in Manny Hill. It's been a little while since Manny's been on the show. I think the last time was probably breaking down a Super Bowl. So on a day, Manny, where at least as of this moment, the Minnesota Vikings have not blown our socks off with retaining TJ Hawkinson, retaining Eric Wilson, and bringing in a depth cornerback. What position are you focused on now of, hey guys, knock, knock, better wake up inside Rob Brzezinski's office there and get back to free agency before everything is off the table? Like, what are you looking at the most?
Probably, I'm kind of looking at defensive tackle a little bit. I think just because, not that you really need like a big time splash type of player, kind of like what they did with Hargrave and Allen last year, but I think just to add some depth, if you can just get like a quality veteran type of player on a fairly cheap deal, because obviously with the situation they're in money wise, they can't be big spenders in free agency. But if you can get like a bargain bin type of guy, like what did the Texans get Sheldon Rankins for last year? What was it, like $3-4 million or something like that?
I think it was maybe 7 or 8, and then they just brought him back today, I think on a 2-year, $12 million deal. And those guys are definitely out there. Like I was looking at Deshaun Hand, who's bounced around, and it's kind of a run stuffer. And that it felt like if only they had that on the roster and not traded away for basically nothing in Harrison Phillips. But that was what was missing in the early part of the season when they played some running teams, was just having that guy who could slow down the opposing team and stuff some gaps. And it feels like that is very much necessary for where they're at.
Yeah, no question. Just because I think, I mean, obviously you have Jalen Redmond, who's turned himself into a really, really good player and a key piece for this defense. But if you could get another guy that, is kind of a veteran guy that can still play a little bit, not super expensive, you plug that guy in and you kind of have a rotational type of thing with, Levi Drake Rodriguez and Ingram Dawkins and some of those younger guys that you're trying to develop in that spot, just to have some depth there. Because that's ultimately what they're going to have to do now with, I think with a lot of these sort of holes that they have, aside from the draft, but if you're going to spend in free agency, you're not going to be able to spend a lot, and you're going to have to make really smart economical decisions to players that are just solid, that can give you some depth and give you some moments of playing well, just because almost everything they did last year in free agency, while it seemed great at the time, and you and I both talked about this a year ago around this time, where we were excited about all the moves that they were making and all the money they were spending, but a lot of that stuff, whether it was injury or just age, a lot of that stuff just blew up in their face. It just was not did not live up to what they spent the money on. So now they're kind of paying that bill a little bit, having to cut some guys, having to cut, Hargrave and Allen, and getting stuck with having to pay some dead cap for that. So I think just being economically sound, getting a guy in there, kind of like what they did by bringing in James Pierre, of, just a depth guy who's a quality guy, not a big splash, not a big name, but he can give you some quality snaps on that side of the ball, and you find a way to kind of go from there.
Adam says, do you think that Grenard gets traded once Trey Hendrickson signs? That I would say is possible, because you got Max Crosby found a home, Jalen Phillips found a home, and there might be some teams who are still sitting and waiting to see if they could get Trey Hendrickson. But then after he's off the board, then pretty much all of the free agent edge rushers would be gone, and then Jonathan Grenard would become potentially more valuable and more sought after, and a bunch of teams that maybe missed out on this, that, or the other thing. And Philadelphia must have known that Phillips was going to go, because there was a report that they contacted the Vikings, and it was a good idea for them to hang up the phone and not give the Philadelphia Eagles one of the better edge rushers in the National Football League. That one has had my intrigue quite a bit, of that idea. Now, look, it is supposed to be a good edge rusher draft, and if you can get a good edge rusher, then the surplus value is absolutely enormous. But there is something that does need to be mentioned as we're trying to project onto next year, which is, if you do trade Jonathan Grenard and you are asking Dallas Turner to take on the big role, and you've lost Hargrave and Allen, which I think we all would say, okay, well, that's all right, because you can replace it with this, that, and the other thing. Those guys played like 1,500 snaps. That was one thing about them in terms of their value, that even if it wasn't a flawless fit, and even if they weren't the dominant players they once were, they still played a lot, and they still did create a fair number of overall quarterback pressures. So now it feels like there's moving parts, and I think that this might have to be a really good coaching job eventually for Brian Flores, because it's just hard to look at what's available and say, oh, all they need to do is just this guy, and then they're good to go, and they're going to be this untouchable defense. This defense has a lot to like, but if Grenard is not here, I think that it has a lot of holes that we maybe didn't expect going into this offseason.
Brian Flores, that means you would have to work a lot of your magic, and you would have to really live up to being, the defensive coordinator that we have said that this team can't afford to lose. You're going to have to really live up to that praise. It would be similar, I think, to what he kind of had to do in 2023, and, to a lesser degree, 2024, where, he had to take some guys where you've got some good players, but you got to take some of these other guys and hopefully kind of get creative and elevate them a little bit. And again, I mentioned, LDR and Ingram Dawkins and some of these younger guys that you're trying to develop. Can they take on a bigger role and get better as players? You still have very good players on this defense. If you lose Jonathan Grenard, you still have Van Ginkel, you still have Blake Cashman, you still have two corners that are really solid. Jalen Redmond is emerged as a star defensive tackle, but you're going to need some of those other guys to really kind of step up, and that's going to take Brian Flores really working his magic, really living up to his reputation as one of the best defensive minds in this league. That's what it's going to take. And I think, once those guys got released, or once we got word that those guys were getting released, I think that was kind of the idea to begin with, is that it's gonna take a little bit more from Brian Flores. Not that he's not capable of it, but it's gonna take some magic a little bit, just with those veteran defensive tackles, being out the door. And now it's going to be even more important for him to be able to do that if they're going to move on from Jonathan Grenard. Now, they could draft, whatever draft capital they get for Jonathan Grenard if they decide to move on from him. You could draft somebody and that guy steps in and maybe he kind of blows us away and he emerges as a huge presence on this defense. But you can't really bank on that. I think you have to really, in this case, bank on Brian Flores really working his magic and turning water into wine, making lemonade out of lemons, and making this defense strong again. Because even regardless of who the quarterback is going to be, if it's Kyler Murray, it's looking like it's going to be Kyler Murray. If this team is going to compete in 2026, they need the defense to be strong again. You would, in theory, pretty obviously be upgrading at the quarterback position, but you're still going to need that defense to be strong in order to compete.
I think what Flores is going to need to do, and we won't really know this until the draft is over and we have all the list of players, because, KOC might just draft a center and a wide receiver or running back and be like, well, find some UDFAs, my dude. But I think that Brian Flores will probably get his piece of the draft pie. And what's going to happen in order for them to have a defense that's in the top 7 or 8 again, even if there's improvements on offense, they have the ball more than they did last year, they're going to have to get some more out of these younger players, whether that's guys that they've drafted early or recently, or if it's guys that they're drafting this year, like Ty Ingram Dawkins, Elijah Williams. These are players that are not high draft picks, but you're going to have to find something there. Levi Drake Rodriguez has to take another step if you're not going out and getting, and we'll see on Caleb Banks. I'm very interested in what the league ends up thinking of these defensive tackles. I'm not that impressed with the defensive tackle group going into the draft. And I noticed that Daniel Jeremiah doesn't even have those guys in the first round. Like, he's got Peter Woods and he's got Caleb Williams outside, or I should say on his big board, outside of the top 32 players in the entire draft, which kind of makes me a little hesitant. I like the idea of a corner. I like the idea of a receiver, always and forever. I like the idea of even Kenyon Sadiq and bringing him in and pairing him with Hawkinson for a year and then going forward with him. But either way you do it, even if you draft Avion Terrell and then in the second round you take a defensive tackle, you're still going to have to draft and develop those guys on that side of the football. And you're still going to have to find some Isaiah Rodgers, some Eric Wilsons that I think will come in this free agency. And Pierre is one of them that, hey, here's a veteran player who in a small sample size has been good, but it's going to require a very, very good coaching job, which I think now we can get to because it's the end of day one here, or we're closing in on it. The end of day one is now that we know some stuff, we know some information about where this team is at. We, I think, know that someone else is more likely to start at quarterback than JJ McCarthy at this moment. We know that the backfield is likely to be limited in some way. They might draft one, but it's probably not going to be Jeremiah Love. So if it's not him, then it's going to have some limitations. I think we've got the sense that the center position might belong to Blake Brandel because all these centers have gone to other teams or they've gone off the board. Jalen Naylor is a Raider. Their punting is going to regress, Manny.
Yeah.
What can we say about, as of this moment? Because I'm always doing kind of this in my mind, like a expectation check-in. And I've mentioned that on FanDuel, the Vikings are plus 700 to win the division, which is 4th out of the 4 teams. Like, what's the expectation check-in as of this moment before they have got the quarterback and with the holes for the rest of the offseason, and then kind of just where this franchise is at in comparison to the rest of the NFC North?
Well, the NFC North, I think even if you bring in Kyler Murray, you're still kind of up against it with the rest of this division because the other 3 teams all still have very good quarterbacks. And, now, in theory, you bring in Kyler Murray and that's going to help, I think, close that gap a little bit. Because if you roll with JJ McCarthy, it's by far and away, it's not even a conversation. You're rolling in to 2026 with the worst quarterback in the division. Now with Kyler Murray, it gives you kind of a fighting chance. And I think again, it's going to go back to what they're able to do to sort of solidify some depth. We talked about on the defensive side. You even mentioned the running back room. What is that going to look like? Can you find, if you're not going to be able to get Jeremiah Love in the first round, are you able to get like Jadarian Price, who, shared a backfield with Jeremiah Love at Notre Dame as a day 2 guy that can kind of come in and there's not a lot of pressure on him to be a 1,400-yard back out of the gate, but he's a talented guy. He's had some explosive plays for Notre Dame as well. Can you bring in a guy like that in the draft and kind of pair him with Jordan Mason to kind of have a nice, fresh 1-2 punch in that room? Because I think regardless of who the quarterback is going to be, we know that improving the running game overall as a whole is going to be really important for the Vikings to have success in 2026. So that's going to be, I think, an expectation for them to somehow, some way, whether it's free agency or the draft, address the running back room and add some talent and some depth there. And yeah, I think with center, I think the best play at this point, because the free agent pool just isn't great, and you can't rely on a rookie center to come in and be great right away. You might just have to roll with Blake Brandel and, just hope that he can be solid there and not blow up, your entire offense. If you get Will Fries back and he's, can kind of take a step up from what he did last year, Donovan Jackson continues to develop as a left guard, and then you need your 2 tackles to be healthy. I think if you can get all of that, I think you can be fine with Blake Brandel at center as long as he's just solid and not a complete disaster. So I think the overall expectation is you're bringing Kyler Murray, you compete, and Brian Flores makes, again, like I said before, lemons and turns it into lemonade, turns water into wine, and gives you a chance to really compete. And, maybe one of those other teams in the division kind of falls off a little bit. Maybe the Bears are a team that kind of falls back to earth a little bit. We'll kind of see. We'll see how things go with Garrett Bradbury at center for them now. That's going to be very interesting seeing him. But I think the expectation is just to compete. Can they win this division? I think it's possible. They would need some things to go their way. But I think it's really going to depend on, can they solidify some positions, add some depth, and maybe play above what the expectations are.
Maybe they need to draft Caleb Banks just because Garrett Bradbury is in the division. But, even if you went into free agency and did a really great job the rest of the way, let's say you get Elgton Jenkins, Rashad White, and Darnell Mooney, and Deshaun Hand, and you spend almost nothing on any of these guys, but all of them have a chance to be pretty good players, not elite or not Pro Bowl level, but all pretty solid pros. What still is hard to get around to is finding the Vikings to be a Super Bowl contender. Now, I don't think it's that hard to look at them as an NFC North contender because, as you mentioned, Chicago just sort of had to desperately go find themselves a center, and they didn't get Max Crosby, and they're not, I think, doing a crazy amount so far on defense, which I kind of thought that they might, but their money situation isn't flawless. Like, they've spent a lot in recent years. They're taking on some dead cap because they were the big spending team the last couple of seasons, and they had to get rid of Tremaine Edmonds. They had to trade away DJ Moore, and they have not had this huge free agency that I thought maybe they would have. So they've got some flaws on the defensive side. The Packers have had to move on from a lot of players over the last couple of years. They have a little bit of a one-man defense at this moment. I don't think anything else is impressive about the Green Bay Packers defense except for Edgerrin Cooper, who I really like. But aside from that, Rashawn Gary is gone. Even if he had faded, he was kind of a Viking killer. And Kingsley Enagbare is not there anymore. He signed a $10 million deal somewhere else. Maybe everyone signed with the Raiders or Jets, probably. And they've got a lot of holes to fill. And then I look at the Lions and they got a center, but they need a left tackle. So they've got a lot of holes to fill. The division could be one, but making them into a Super Bowl contender, even as much as I have sat here and defended, Kyler Murray, and I think it's a really good idea, and I think that he would be very good with this team. The timeline is really interesting. And I want to read this comment from VFlowBX, who says, you're making one hell of an argument for trading Jonathan Grenard with your comments about quarterback, running back, Brandel. It might be time to get some draft compensation. I don't have a big problem with them living in a little bit of both worlds this offseason, Manny. But when I tried to write this today at purpleinsider.football newsletter, sign up. I tried to write this today, looking into the crystal ball into the future and try to figure out the team's timeline. And it's like, well, if this happens, then it's probably this timeline. But if that happens, then it's probably that timeline. Like, there's so many different directions where you could bring in Kyler. We keep saying Kyler because we think that, but we won't know until Wednesday afternoon. So we keep saying, hey, it's probably going to be Kyler, but we truly don't know what's going to happen there. So let's say it's him, though. He might play so well they sign him to a contract, or he might play so poorly that McCarthy's starting 6 games into the year. We just don't even really know, because he's had these ups and downs and injuries in his career. And if McCarthy shows you enough, or just even in, let's say, training camp, I don't think there's any competition if you get Kyler, but let's say there becomes one because McCarthy's playing so well. Or you might have to get rid of everybody and draft someone in 2027. Like, we just don't have any idea how to project this roster out, which means to me that they should keep one eye on to the future, and potentially maybe you should trade Jonathan Grenard. As much as I don't want him out of the locker room, he's one of the best guys there to talk with. He's one of the best players on the team. He's one of the best leaders on the team. He's absolutely beloved by Flores, O'Connell, everybody. Even Dallas Turner has cited him many times as a major part of his development, but they have to be thinking to at least some extent long-term beyond just 2026, which kind of brings me back to, we talked about Flores, but Kevin O'Connell's situation is interesting here as well, because you're going to ask for him to, if it's Murray or it's Geno Smith, or if it's JJ McCarthy, who eventually ends up starting, or if it's Kirk Cousins, none of these are just roll the football out and that guy will do it. So he's going to have to, I think, earn his dollars as well from that big contract extension that he got after 2024, no matter what ends up happening here in the rest of free agency and the draft.
Yeah, I think the overall expectations, again, like I was saying before, is going to have to be to compete, just because we know that the Wolves don't want to miss the playoffs 2 years in a row. Every time that seems to happen, they end up firing the coach anyway. So yeah, I think this is going to take a little bit of magic from Kevin O'Connell too, to try and, because you're in this sort of a weird spot where you're trying to, like, again, I hate to keep using the competitive rebuild type of terminology, but you are kind of back in that spot again that you were in a couple of years ago, where you're like, okay, we've got some really good players on this team. We've had to let some other guys go, some older players go that were expensive. Now can we sort of piece this together and get some good, get better quarterback play than we had in 2025, and try to compete enough to get ourselves in the conversation of really seriously competing for this division. And then maybe you get a favorable matchup. Let's say you do win the division in 2026. You get a home playoff game. Maybe you win that home playoff game and you go to the divisional round and you compete really hard and you come up a little bit short. I think if you're the Vikings, if you're KOC, I think you have to feel really good about that. And I think if it plays out that way, I think the Wolves would feel pretty good about the head coach that they have, because I think it kind of shows that, okay, we can pivot a little bit, make some changes, trade away a beloved player, talking about Grenard here, and we still found our way into the playoffs and still kind of competing for this division. I think you have to feel pretty good about that. The other part of this is, okay, well, what if you do spend, a little bit in free agency, you go and get, a couple of more James Pierre type of players at other positions, and then Kyler Murray gets hurt, and then you're rolling with JJ McCarthy, and then you end up 7-10. Then what? How are you really feeling about Kevin O'Connell at that point? How are the Wilfs feeling about this? And that really puts, I think, this organization at a crossroads. And what's tricky about it is, like, I could totally see something like that playing out, but I could also see this team going 10-7 or 11-6, and Kyler Murray comes in, plays some of the best football of his career, and they make the playoffs, and then everybody's feeling a lot better about where things are headed. So it's going to be dicey, and there's a couple of different directions that this can go. And I think if you're that organization, you just have to hope that everything kind of plays out in the best case scenario.
I was thinking about the difference between 8 and 11 wins in the NFL is a couple of field goals, a couple of fumbles, a couple of whatever it is, contested catches that come down one way or the other. The difference between an 8 and 11 win season about how people feel about Kevin O'Connell would be, I think, very, very different. Because if you bring in Kyler or Geno and you win 11 games with them, we're going to look at him and go, man, if you're a veteran quarterback and you can handle this offense, you can be here and be good. And maybe the next draft, or maybe with JJ McCarthy developing behind these guys, there's a step there that can be taken, because these were all, even Kirk to some extent, but Darnold and Murray or whoever, these are all damaged goods, at least from a leadership perspective. Kirk was, and from a clutch perspective, Kirk was damaged goods. And yet those two things turned around very quickly under KOC. And then Darnold turns around very quickly under KOC. And if he did it 3 times, you'd be like, man, this guy, if you can't succeed under him, right? And with McCarthy, you'd even be saying, well, why don't we maybe see if he has been able to figure it out behind the scenes? Because I have not wanted to write off his career or even his Vikings career yet, just because he didn't have a good start to it. We've seen way too many guys succeed after a slow start to their career. So I think we'd feel really good about it. If they win 8, then you're looking around going, what is this franchise? Because you can't draft high. And I mean, even if McCarthy was coming back, like, you're losing a lot of the talent that was supposed to be your supporting cast. Whereas Justin Jefferson, after 8 wins, is he going to feel like he wants to stick around alongside? It's crazy how thin the margin is between the directions of this team into the future. And I mean, I don't know if any signing over the next couple of days is going to change that outside of the quarterback position. But I was trying to kind of project and think out. It's like, man, they should, I think the Wilfs should decide, and I've always felt this way, that you should decide before the season, okay, if nothing goes catastrophically wrong, like, are we going to move on from our coach if he misses the playoffs or not? I mean, I think you should decide before the season, because everyone's just so angry when it goes sideways. You can make bad decisions. I think they should really set their expectations and stick with that. Like, this is what bar you have to reach as our coach. And if you don't, well, then maybe there's consequences. But I always think, oh, man, you got to really think long and hard before you get rid of a coach like that. Because if he goes somewhere with a quarterback that's locked in and is very good, like, let's say Harbaugh loses his marbles next year and they fire him and he goes and works with Justin Herbert or something. Like, do you want that? If you don't want that, then maybe you don't want him fired. In the comments here, DLM says it's hard to pick a direction when we never commit to a real rebuild and are not a Super Bowl contender. And that's where I think, Manny, you can have your foot in both buckets. It's just harder. It's so obvious if you're like the Raiders and what they did today. Yes, some of those contracts are going to blow up, but it's so obvious what you should do as the Raiders. What you should do as the Raiders is draft Fernando Mendoza, get every free agent you possibly can, trade get every asset you can for the future, sign multi-year deals, and try to have a good environment by the time that guy's ready to start. That's what New England did. They made the Super Bowl. That's what the Bears did. Like, the Vikings direction wasn't wrong last year, but when it didn't work, that's where you end up backed into a very difficult corner. I did want to ask you about some other things that happened today. Third and Nedry. I thought it was third and nerdy, which would have been good for the show. Says, who's the biggest threat to steal Kyler at this point? So this actually brings me to what I wanted to talk with you about, Manny. The Miami Dolphins signed Malik Willis. That was a fun discussion to have of whether you would do the Malik Willis thing. I think his price overall was extremely reasonable for the Dolphins. It's kind of more of a 2-year contract when you look at the guaranteed money. I mean, it was 3 for 67, I think, overall, and maybe 40 something guaranteed. Very reasonable for the Dolphins. A great swing by them to see if they've got something there and then can build on it in the future. I don't know if the Vikings would have wanted to afford that or to take the risk with someone who's thrown not that many passes when they already kind of have that issue with JJ McCarthy. Also, maybe a good argument for, hey, look, a guy developed behind the scenes and got a lot better, as we're saying. But Tua to the Falcons, Malik Willis to Miami. How do you think the rest of it plays out for the quarterback carousel? And oh yeah, Jacoby Brissett will be once again quarterbacking the Arizona Football Cardinals of Glendale, Arizona. So good luck to them.
Yeah, have a blast with that.
Yeah.
Mike LaFleur.
That's gonna be tough.
Yeah, it's gonna be rough. Well, I just hope, like, for his sake, a little side note with them, I just hope that they're patient, because if that's looking like 3-14 again, probably. And I think that they need to give that young head coach an opportunity to really try and build something.
Yeah.
But anyway, quarterbacks. Well, as far as like competition for the Vikings for Kyler, the only other team, it sounded like Geno's going to go to the Jets, which, talk about a full circle moment there. Malik to Miami. It feels like maybe Pittsburgh is the only other team I can think of.
Yep.
And that's if Aaron Rodgers decides to retire or go have some more ayahuasca or whatever. I don't know what the hell he wants to do, but Pittsburgh seems like the only other team that would, if Rodgers is not going to go back there, then, maybe they pivot to Kyler Murray. So it kind of feels like that's maybe the last thing to kind of drop here. I'm kind of fascinated to see where Kirk ends up at. Maybe the Raiders kind of make some sense for Kirk with, you go there, he's going to start. You don't have to rush Mendoza out there. He's familiar with Clint Kubiak, reunited with Jalen Naylor. That could be interesting. They didn't really connect a whole lot the first time around here, but it feels like all of the quarterback stuff has really kind of figured itself out. Pittsburgh seems to be the only other one besides the Vikings where it's like, okay, well, let's see what really happens there. Maybe they swoop in if Aaron Rodgers decides to do whatever. Maybe they swoop in and go to Kyler. And then at that point, if you're the Vikings, then what do you do? If Kyler suddenly comes off the board out of left field, do you pivot to Kirk? Do you go Joe Flacco? Do you just say we're going to roll with McCarthy with a backup in competition? I don't know. It kind of feels like if Kyler isn't the guy, then you're really kind of, I think, nervous going into 2026 if you're Kevin O'Connell.
Well, because think about even from Geno Smith's perspective, if I'm Geno and you give me 2 different teams I could play for, one of them has a young quarterback that they drafted who they're saying that they're not giving up on and they want me to compete with, or another team that has had such horrible quarterback play that if I'm even decent, they will worship me. And that's the New York Jets. And the Jets do have a really good number 1 wide receiver. No one's been able to throw him the football as of late, but they do have a really good number 1 wide receiver in Garrett Wilson. They brought back Breece Hall. They've spent a lot of money on their defense so far this offseason. I think you could talk Geno into go back to New York and just play football. No one thinks you're going to win the Super Bowl, but you only get so many years in this league. If you spent one of them as JJ McCarthy's backup because you lost the camp competition, you're going to be pretty darn mad at yourself for not signing with the New York Jets. I could see Geno having that mindset, which means on Wednesday, you better solidify Kyler Murray pretty fast, because otherwise, yeah, I mean, Kirk, it makes total sense for Kirk to go to Vegas. Start, maybe, look, it might only be the first 10 games, and they might, look at that division, and they might fall behind in the division and want to go to Mendoza. But if he plays really well and they're in the playoff hunt, then he could keep the job the entire year. They should not rush Fernando Mendoza at all. And Kirk, at this point in his career, he knows what's going on. He's almost 40 years old. What is he, 37?
Yeah,
he knows what's
he's
happening.
He's not a long-term.
Right.
He knows that he's not a long-term answer for anybody.
Right. So are you going to go, and who's going to play quarterback for Cleveland? I saw someone report that Dylan Gabriel is in the mix still. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Who wants to? I mean, those poor guys in Cleveland, I know some of their radio people who every day have been tossing around these different ideas. Well, what about Kyler? What about Malik? And I'm like, what? What about what? What about Eric Zaire?
They might trot Deshaun Watson back out there.
Right? He might be their best option. He might be truly they should just stick with Shedeur Sanders. And if it goes like Jimmy Clausen or something with Carolina got Cam Newton because of Jimmy Clausen. So Arch Manning to Cleveland. Oh my gosh.
What do you mean? Shedeur made the Pro Bowl.
Yes, he was a Pro Bowl quarterback. That is very true. The worst before that,
18.
The worst before that was who? Like Tyler Huntley. He made it the one time, and then Shedeur made it this time. I mean, my goodness. So, but they almost have to have some sort of competition there. Joe Flacco would become an answer if all the other boxes got checked off. So for people who are, I don't want Kyler or whatever else, like that, actually, this gets kind of bleak. And I've always thought that most of the anti-Kyler people are just pro JJ McCarthy people. And I think you can live in both of those worlds. I don't think that you have to pick a side. I think you can look at it and say that this is actually going to be better for JJ McCarthy if he gets some time, because if he goes out there and struggles in the first 5 games, then I don't know what you do. Like, I don't know what you do with his career. Then he goes somewhere else and maybe he's a backup or whatever. I think to salvage a chance that this actually turns around, that he would need some time. But Manny, the rest of the league was very happy today, making their moves, spending their dollars, prancing around. They're doing emergency podcasts. I'm seeing all my friends on Twitter. Oh, we're going live to react to this big signing from our team. And I'm like, yeah, I'm on hour 5 of talking about the Vikings not doing something. So what else caught your eye today in free agency?
I think just everything that the Raiders did, because I really like what they did. And I think, as we mentioned, if they go and get Kirk Cousins to come in and just be the bridge guy and start so that you don't have to rush Fernando Mendoza out there, I think that just makes a ton of sense for them to do, because there's no pressure, unless Kirk gets hurt or something, or it's just awful, which I don't think Kirk would be awful there.
Yeah.
I think he'd be fine. There's no pressure to rush Mendoza out there, and you can really play it the right way when you're trying to build around a franchise quarterback. You let this sort of simmer over the course of the next couple of years, and then maybe that third year is when Mendoza makes the big jump, and you're really putting together a roster that's able to compete. So I really like what the Raiders did, getting the draft capital that they got by trading Max Crosby to the Baltimore Ravens. But I also, on that same token, I do like what Baltimore did with trading for Max Crosby, because it's, they were one of the worst pass rushing defenses in the entire league. I mean, they were kind of at the bottom of the league in that department. And so he's really going to help solidify that and give that defense a boost that they kind of have been lacking in the last couple of years. So those are the two ones that I'm really liking a lot. And, everybody else just kind of felt like they were spending a lot of money, and we'll kind of see how everything plays out. It didn't happen today. It happened a couple days ago. I love the Rams getting Trent McDuffie.
Yeah.
That is
and Jalen Watson today.
Oh yeah. Jalen Watson. Yeah. Another Kansas City corner there as well. That was just, it was like the perfect move for a team that is obviously a Super Bowl contender. They looked at, what they had last year and they said, okay, well, what else do we need? Oh, we need a corner that can compete and give us a chance to shut down Jackson Smith and Jigma, because we're going to have to play him twice a year. At least give you a chance to kind of, slow him down a little bit. I love that move for them. The Rams are going full Rams again.
Yes.
They're saying bleep those picks again, because they see this window now and they understand, like, we might only have one more year with Matthew Stafford. Let's try and go for one more run, and we'll figure out what to do without those picks. We survived. We gave up a lot of draft capital and assets to get Matthew Stafford the first time around. It worked out. We won a Super Bowl, and the franchise didn't fall apart after that. They were able to sort of, rejuvenate and rebuild again for another run. So I like what they did a lot. They're kind of standing out, and I do, we'll see what happens if Geno Smith goes there, but I don't hate what the Jets are doing. It's just, it's just like, you got to figure out what they're going to do at quarterback. It's got to work out. And I don't know if Aaron Glenn knows what he's doing out there. That's kind of the other part of it. But, on paper and some of the moves that they've made, Minka Fitzpatrick is, maybe not the same player he was a couple of years ago, but he's going to add some credibility to that defense, a defense that needs a lot of help.
Yes.
So, I kind of like what they did, but, we'll see how that plays out. But mainly what the Raiders did with the guys that they brought in free agency, and then the Rams making the big splash for McDuffie has really stood out to me.
The Rams are definitely in this is your last year. We're going to do absolutely everything we possibly can, and there is no future. And maybe they'll draft a quarterback in the middle rounds and hope that they can develop that player. But I think that they've all got the sense there. I also, here's a hot take to throw out there. And if it happens, then we can go back to this moment. I think after Stafford retires, McVay is going to retire. And I think he's going to go be on TV and be Bill Cowher or John Madden and just be, very happy in his role, or maybe John Gruden and go back to coaching 10 years later or something like that. Because that's one where you walk away. And I don't know why this example came into my mind and not other ones, but like Caitlin Clark's coach at Iowa just left after, and she was at the age where you generally retire, but it's like, okay, well, that's enough for me. Like, it's not going to get better than that. So I'm going to call it a day. And it feels like they might have to do that in Los Angeles. So why not go all in? Put all your chips in the middle of the table. And at this moment on FanDuel, they have the second highest odds to win the conference, only behind the Seattle Seahawks. And, with the Vikings, the Rams were in their heads last year in free agency. Jackson Smith Njigba is in their heads 100% with these moves. But I also think that if you're really dealing with a 1-year timeline, you just got two great football players who can shut down receivers that are physical, instinctual, cause turnovers. The Jets, I think at some point you just have to try to be fairly competitive. They've just been so pathetic that you have to do something. If you're Aaron Glenn, you got no turnovers or whatever it was, no interceptions the whole freaking year. I mean, you got to do something. You have to do something. I think Aaron Glenn is still playing defense as if it's 2002. And I thought he was doing that with Detroit too. Let's rapid fire some of these, if you don't mind. Go through some of these signings and just, we could tie them into Vikings or just give a take on it. Jalen Phillips going 4 for 120 to the Carolina Panthers. The connection to the Vikings is that if you're Jonathan Grenard and you already were thinking you wanted a new contract, Jalen Phillips is kind of like Jonathan Grenard. He's not Nick Bosa or Max Crosby. He's not Micah Parsons or Myles Garrett, but he is that next level down of guys who are really good at this. And he actually doesn't even have as big of a sample size as Jonathan Grenard and ends up with that much money. This is where I could see the impasse happening. is when Grenard and his representation look at that and go, you guys are going to redo our contract when this is the type of player who's very, very good, by the way, Jalen Phillips. But like, this is the player who's making way like 10 million more than our guy. So I think that one does have an impact potentially on Jonathan Grenard. But did you like that for Carolina?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I think Carolina, again, can Bryce Young kind of take another step? It, feels like he got a little bit better in 2025 and kind of recovered from that sort of brief benching that he had, a couple of years ago. But Carolina feels like a team that's, especially in that division where, you just won that division. Granted, you were 8-9, but Tampa Bay, what is Tampa Bay going to look like? They're losing Mike Evans. What kind of impact is that going to have on Baker Mayfield? Atlanta is, we'll see what happens at quarterback. I don't know if I mean, Tua's options were limited, but I don't know how that's going to play out there. Good luck, Kevin Stefanski. And then New Orleans is another team that could maybe, take a little bit of a jump if Tyler Shuck goes up another level down there as well. But if you're Carolina, you feel like this division, we can maybe get a chokehold on this division a little bit over the next couple of years and continue to get a little bit better and add to our pass rush by getting a guy like Jalen Phillips and see where that goes, or see if some of those young receivers can kind of develop for Bryce Young as well. I like it for Carolina to just say, hey, we made the playoffs. We won the division in 2025. Let's try and build on that and go up a notch and see what happens.
Rapid fire, Manny. Rapid fire.
Yes, I like what the Panthers did.
Carolina, oddly, on FanDuel is plus 500 to win their division, which is last. And Tampa Bay is the favorite at plus 165, which is kind of interesting. Now, sans Mike Evans, who goes and signs with the San Francisco 49ers for a 3-year contract, $20 million per year. I thought Mike Evans was going to retire and just say, thanks for the memories, Tampa Bay Bucks. I mean, this one feels kind of risky. Let me make the joke about the, whatever it is, the electric company or something that's next to them. Like, no, Mike, stay away. They've got that electric thing that ruins everyone's tendons, which is not really real, but still someone on the internet put it out there. So it's got to be real. Anyway, Mike Evans to San Francisco.
I like it for them. Kyle Shanahan always figures out to get the best he possibly can out of receivers. And I think with them moving on from Brandon Ayuk, Mike Evans is a guy that's really good. He's a professional. He's going to show up. He's not going to drive by the stadium and do weird things like Brandon Ayuk did. So I think you'll get a little bit more professionalism in that building. So I like it for San Francisco.
I do like it for San Francisco, but it's becoming noticeable in the NFC how many teams think that they can win for next year. And even in the Vikings case, one thing that's a little bit difficult about the Vikings conversation is that you and I have come up in a world where people focus on, can you win the Super Bowl? If not, you should just tank. And the Vikings have never subscribed to that. And they've always ended up with kind of the same results. But I also want to make this argument that if you were to, like, would you like a ticket to the dance, even if you're not going to win Spring King or whatever, right? And I think if you have a chance with Kyler Murray to win the division, you should take that chance and then be at home for the playoffs and see what happens under the current construction. If they were in a very different spot, then I would change my opinion. If this was 2022 going into 2023 and they had tried to keep everybody, I would have said, what are you doing? It's clear that you can't get there. And they made the right move getting rid of everybody. They're not there. They're not in a spot to get rid of everyone. So I don't know what else they should do other than to try to win the division this year. You should just let JJ play it out. Okay, but if he can't win, then you might get your coach fired and you might get your wide receiver traded. And I know there's some people that want that, but I don't know that that's what you really want. I don't know that you want Justin Jefferson going to Jacksonville or something and winning a Super Bowl with Trevor Lawrence. Like, I just don't think that. I just picked a random team, but I just don't think you actually want that. So do you want a ticket to get in, at least with this group, to see if they can get it done? That's the position that you're in and that you should be. I think San Francisco's kind of in the same spot with this Mike Evans signing. I have a tough time believing, especially if they're going to lose Trent Williams, which was what it sounds like, that they are a true Super Bowl contender. I don't think you're on the same level as the Rams. I don't think you're on the same level as a Seattle team that's bringing a lot of people back. I know they're going to have a different running back there, but they've got a run blocking offensive line that was responsible for a lot of that. I just feel like you're in a spot where you kind of did something desperate because you had to, and Kyle Shanahan will make this work and they will be competitive. But it strikes me that you only do this unless you really think that you can make it happen. And how many NFC teams, I'm going to count them up. How many NFC teams do we think they think they can really compete? 4 in the NFC North, because the Vikings would not be considering other quarterbacks other than JJ McCarthy if they thought they had no chance to compete. NFC East, Philly. So we got 4, Philly, Dallas, Washington. I don't think the Giants think they're there yet, but that's 7 in the NFC. Tampa Bay for sure thinks that they can. The Falcons shouldn't. No. New Orleans should not. They got Ryan Wright today. So.
Damn it.
I know. They did get ETN. I don't think they think they can really compete yet. So let's not count them. So we got 4, 7, Tampa Bay, Carolina. I think Carolina thinks they can.
Carolina's trying.
Spending that much money. So now we're at what? 9? 4, 7, 9. And then in the West, all 3. That's 12 teams in the NFC who are going into the season that think that they can really, really actually win something. Is that crazy?
75% of the conference thinks that they can compete. And there's only 7 spots. There's only 7 playoff spots. So 5 teams that think they can compete in 2026 are going to be extremely disappointed. At least 5 teams are going to be extremely disappointed.
Don't you like that I blamed you for the lack of rapid firing some of these big signings? Kenneth Walker to the Kansas City Chiefs.
Love it for them. They needed to upgrade the running back room, and Pacheco's okay, but I mean, Kenneth Walker is that dude, as he showed in the Super Bowl, and really, really talented player. And Kansas City, I know it's easy to forget about them, and we'll see how healthy Mahomes is going to be to start the year. He might not be, but when he is ready to play, and it sounds like they're going to get Travis Kelce back, I'll be curious to see if they maybe use a draft pick on a tight end, knowing that Travis Kelce's kind of at the end, to kind of groom him underneath him. But for Kenneth Walker, I love it for him. Congratulations to him and getting paid. I love, even though you're not supposed to pay running backs, I do love seeing running backs get paid, because it's like, dude, who knows how long your career is going to be? Get that bag if you can. So good for Kenneth Walker, and he's going to a team that obviously is looking to contend again and bring back their great quarterback. So I love it for Kansas City. It'll solidify the run game and take some pressure off of Mahomes as he comes back from the injury.
I think it was a big contract. It was not an absurd contract. It wasn't like they treated him as if he was Saquon Barkley. The question I have about Kansas City, for several years, we just acted like team building didn't apply to them. It was like, okay, well, they can just get anyone and get Mike Remmers and Andrew Wiley and whoever else on the offensive line and Orlando Brown, and they'll just make it work. And at wide receiver, they can get Juju Smith-Schuster and just make it work. And on defense, they were good, but they weren't spending huge amounts of money. They were kind of keeping their own guys, and everything they drafted turned to gold on that side for a little while. But now, they lose their starting corners, and they're getting their running back, and so forth, but their quarterback is maybe not going to be ready for week 1. Patrick Mahomes coming off the ACL. That's going to be pretty tough. it's hard for me to still put Kansas City, as much as Mahomes deserves all the benefit of the doubt, still put them in a spot where I would say, yes, that's a top Super Bowl contender. Of course they are, as long as they have Patrick Mahomes. And Kenneth Walker helps this a lot because you could tell what teams were doing to Mahomes over the last few years. They were just dropping everybody back and being like, all right, drop back and pick us apart. And he was able to do it a lot and control the ball a lot, but it was so much harder than when he was hitting deep shots to Tyreek Hill. So now, if you can make them pay time and time again with your running back, that's going to be a big deal for them. I think their offensive line is okay. They've never really recovered from letting go of Joe Thuney. And that's what they've really run into, is just this kind of wall of your guys got old and expensive. And even with the greatest quarterback, if he's not quite the same as he was a few years ago, or the circumstances are hurting him, or the league's figured out some things, and instead of God mode, he's just great, then in that division with two other really great franchises, you can end up out of the playoffs. I don't know if I'd have him out of the playoffs right now, but I wouldn't be shocked if they missed it again.
Yeah, I mean, well, again, that's going to depend on like how many games, if any at all, does Mahomes miss to start the season, and do they fall into a hole because I don't know who's their backup going to be. I mean, is it going to be Gardner Minshew again?
He went to the Cardinals today, so I actually don't know.
Oh, the Cardinals are totally cardinaling.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Oh, they're cardinaling hard.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. The other thing too is, we talked about Brian Flores maybe having to work a little magic with the Vikings defense. Steve Spagnuolo might have to do that too with them losing the two corners. He might have to kind of work some magic a little bit with that defense. Chris Jones he's older, you know what I mean? Maybe not quite as good as he once was. Travis Kelce is older. They've got some older guys, and they're trying to hang on to something here. And of course, you've got the greatest quarterback in the world when healthy. So obviously you have to do that. But the other thing is, can they kind of remind me a little bit of, when the Patriots had that first sort of dynasty run, the 3 and 4 years, and Brady was just winning Super Bowls with Deion Branch and David Givens and, whoever else they had at tight end. But then they went through a couple of years where they couldn't really rely on those type of receivers, and they had to make a big splash and get a Randy Moss type of player to kind of help that offense and rejuvenate them. Is Kansas City going to have to do something like that again to kind of boost that wide receiver room too? Because that's another part of this offense where we've seen it kind of catch up to them a little bit now in the last couple of years. Even 2 years ago or 2 seasons ago when they went to the Super Bowl, you kind of saw like Mahomes didn't really have that true number one receiver to rely on. And they got to the Super Bowl, but that really kind of hurt them against Philadelphia because Jalen Hurts had that. He had 2 guys that were fantastic to throw the ball to. Patrick Mahomes doesn't really have that right now. I mean, Rashee Rice is a solid player, but he's not great. They need to find that great guy. Maybe they get in a conversation with AJ Brown. I don't know.
Maybe. Still a lot of moving parts, Manny. I mean, we're only in hour number 9 of or whatever. Day 1 of free agency. There's a long way to go. So I appreciate your time and popping in and giving your perspective on Vikings free agency, which is yet to happen. Now I will say, here's what you'll hear from teams is, hey, retaining our own players is a free agent move. So had the Vikings signed some other free agent linebacker to 3 years, $22 million and not Eric Wilson, it would have felt a little more exciting, but it doesn't. Not that I'm not happy for Eric Wilson or him coming back didn't deserve it, but it doesn't have the same, wow, they just signed some big player. But I also I was just scrolling as we're talking, seeing if there was anyone else that I really need to throw at you. I see a lot of moves that you could see blown up in people's faces. I mean, as I'm going through this, I'm like, are you sure that you want to pay Odafe Owe $25 million per year? Like, are you sure that that's what you really want to do when Baltimore got rid of him after drafting him? And even with ETN, 4 years, 52 is just a lot for a guy that's kind of 4.3 yards per carry. The Titans, again, spending all the money on all these guys as they've done so many times. At least it makes sense this time, but I don't know about some of the spending that's going on. So I think even like a Rashid Shaheed, 3 years, $51 million for a guy that's kind of a punt returner and a bit player. The prices were very high. There's very few players that were really popping. And I just am going to kind of come to the conclusion that it might be better for you not to overspend, which is exactly what you've done in the past many times, and just play it a little bit on the safer side.
It kind of reminds me, there was an NBA offseason, I want to say it was maybe 2017, 16 or 17,
Where they had to spend all the money?
They had to spend all the money because the cap went up just like way up. And then you saw guys like Timothy Mozgov get like $17 million a year. I think an old Luol Deng got a big contract from, I think, the Lakers or something like that. And it's just because everybody had a bunch of cap space, but there wasn't like the superstars weren't really on the move that much. And so it was just like all of these just sort of role players and 7-foot centers who averaged like 7 points a game that were getting paid big contracts. Yeah, you know, you kind of wonder if this offseason is going to be the same kind of thing. I like a lot of what a lot of what the Raiders did. Linderbaum, I think, is just getting him outstanding A+ move because he's still young and he's going to be great for them and great for Mendoza going forward. But yeah, some of these other moves, you're like, good luck. Stay healthy and maybe he's good, but we'll see.
Manny Hill, we will definitely talk again very soon. Maybe when the Vikings have themselves a quarterback. What do you think? Does that work?
That works for me. I'm excited. If it's Kyler Murray, it'll be entertaining in 2026 to say the least.
Yes. Thank you very much, Manny. We will talk soon, my friend.
You got it. Football.
Yeah, that's the thing about Kyler Murray and the idea of bringing in Kyler Murray, which is the franchise is in a spot right now where they are still very much good enough to win the division. And if you look at last year, I know there's going to be some changes from last year, but even if you look at last year, you go, they were close. They weren't a million miles away from potentially winning the division. And they have a good coaching staff. They have one of the best, if not the best, defensive coordinator in the entire NFL. And when Kevin O'Connell has had veteran quarterbacks, I mean, it's worked out. Oh, sorry. I still have my Twitter on the page. I was just scrolling to see if I missed anything. Hey, if I scroll up just a little, can you see Asazia Tomowo? Can I laugh at something real quick today? Just real quick. The Steelers kept Asazia Tomowo. The Panthers kept Caleb Evans. The Texans re-signed Ed Ingram. Vidarian Lowe ended up signing a contract, I think, with San Francisco for multiple years. The 2022 draft was a success, folks. I don't know what you were looking at. The 2022 draft got all sorts of second contracts, and that kind of made me chuckle today that the players that the Vikings let go, a lot of them stayed with their teams or got a decent-sized contract somewhere else. And I'm not saying it was actually a success because the top two guys did not, get any press today, Louis Sean and Andrew Booth Jr., but it's funny to see like that. There's a little bit of, you have to also commit to succeeding at a draft. If you're going to succeed at a draft, you can't just bring in a Vidarian Lowe and then just get rid of him, or draft an Asazia Tomowo and just get rid of him. If you have no plans to develop that player, then you probably won't succeed in developing that player, which is what's happened quite a few times. And the same thing goes for a Caleb Evans. So yes, bring Kwesi back and call the 20. And look, one of his picks, Jalen Naylor, one of those 2022 picks, ended up with a huge contract today. It was a success, folks. 2022 was a win. It is true, though. In the next phase of this thing, you got to commit. You have to commit. And sometimes that's going to be going through some tough times with a younger player and some frustrations. And hey, the guy's not there yet. But if you bail on everybody, then you end up with a team that has to be taped together with undrafted free agents and taped together with, big name free agents that you're spending on, or just hope, I guess, that those top picks work out. But even though the top picks have worked out, they haven't had enough. So you really have to dedicate to, we're going to stack draft capital and we're going to develop those players. Because when you see multiple members of the worst draft class that you've maybe ever had showing up on other teams and staying with them, at least in some sort of role, it's at least evidence the guy could be in the league. I'm not saying Atomowo or Vidarian Lowe or these guys would have been stars, but if you just cut everybody, then you're going to end up bringing in other guys who probably don't have any better chance to actually succeed as depth at those positions rather than developing them. Doomer. So here's what I want to know from you guys for the rest of the chat, because I figured we'd continue to hang around. And thank you so much, Truckin, for the super chat. The fact that Lowe and Ingram got paid with other organizations and we got nothing out of them is an indictment on Kwesi and the organization. I mean, Kwesi? Is it Kwesi? Or is it the coaches? Or, well, look, I mean, Ed Ingram, I still don't see it. I still look at the data and see one of the worst pass blocking linemen who got a lot of money from a team that can't figure it out on the offensive line. Nonetheless, is it the general manager or the coaching staff who was not at all interested in developing younger players? That's really my question, is if your coaching staff is always not happy with how far these players are along and is just moving on and not putting the time into developing them because you're always in win now mode, this is kind of what you get. And these aren't stars, but Vidarian Lowe can play in the league as a swing tackle. And last year you had to go out and hunt for a swing tackle because you didn't want to develop him over a couple of seasons. And there's been a lot of examples of that. You're bringing in James Pierre, who I'm sure is a good, backup type player, but there's been how many other guys, whether it's Nashawn Wright or a Caleb Evans, who have come through here and they don't have time for them. Move on, bring in a veteran, start the veteran. Is that the best approach? Not for the future. It's not. Not going forward. It's not. Maybe you could justify it in the past because they were so much in win now. But if they want to have a hand in both buckets of win now and start thinking toward the future, then the players you draft this year, next year, etc., you're going to have to focus on trying to get the most out of them. And 10K Beers, you're right. I mean, you're right. We didn't even see Vidarian Lowe. I mean, they got rid of him almost immediately. I think it might have even been his rookie camp that they got rid of him. That's what I'm saying. Like, you have to give them some chance. Asezi Atomowo, and I don't know these guys, maybe they didn't like any of their personalities or fits or whatever. I'm sure there's some reason every time, but you start to add up and go, well, they kept the Caleb Evans and he's not a star, but he's on the team. And, they kept the Tomowo, and these aren't joke organizations. It's not like, Carolina got back in the playoffs and the Patriots developed Lowe and the Steelers are keeping a Tomowo. Like, these aren't Arizona. So I've thrown a lot of shots at Arizona. Maybe I should say Cleveland, the Jets, but it's not like these are horrible, horrible teams that kept these guys. It's not that I think that they would have changed the fate of the franchise. I just think it's about a mindset that they've had over the last couple of years that might need to shift a little bit as they go forward. And it's also, if you pin all of draft failures on one person, and then you didn't try to really develop some of the players who had enough talent to be in the league, well, you're going to get draft misses if you're not really attempting to keep those guys and succeed with those guys. That's kind of the point about all the different players from that draft that have ended up sticking in some way or another. Here's what I want to know from you guys as we continue to go forward. And Scott, now's the best time to draft O'Neill's replacement. Could be. The tricky part about that is, so it is a good tackle draft at the top, it seems. The tricky part about that is, do you extend O'Neill? Because, well, he has had some injuries, still a top, at the right tackle position? Definitely top 10. I mean, top 7 right tackles in the league. So you're going to And look, I am in favor of longer term thinking. I'm in favor of longer term thinking, but if you draft a tackle there and then clearly you can't play him, so you draft a tackle, O'Neal plays unless you're trading O'Neal, which doesn't make a lot of sense in a season where you want to win, and you've kept Hawkinson and you've kept Wilson, older players. So you're keeping O'Neal, you're just having your other guy on the bench and not getting anything out of that player in 2026. It's okay if you're moving on from O'Neal and you want to take a long-term, maybe they should split the difference with a middle round pick, but those are hard to get starters out of. I think the tackle position probably for this team is you wait until the wheels come off and then you draft a tackle. So probably not this year, probably next year. That would be my guess. No patience. Maurice, yeah, I mean, that's right. Bob, we need to draft a gunner since Felton is wide receiver 3. We'll kind of have to see who wide receiver 3 is. Dawn says, historically, the Cards are the worst team ever. Rip them every day. That's fair. That's fair. They are absolutely horrific. Oh, Lowe was in his second year. Okay. But I don't think we ever saw him actually play did he play a down for the Vikings? I don't know if he ever did, if he was ever active. But your point about the Cardinals is fair. Jake Plummer, once upon a time, went from a Cardinal who could barely win to a Denver Bronco who won 13 games. The Jets and the Cardinals are pretty similar. The Magic Man, Ty Felton, gets some playing time next year. I would expect so. It's going to really depend on his own development. And I think we're going to find out what they think of Ty Felton, depending on how much they invest. But they've already let all the wide receivers go off the board. I don't think Jalen Naylor was going to stay here because of opportunity in Las Vegas. He could be wide receiver 2 for them probably and have a chance to catch 50 or 60 balls as opposed to 20 or 30. But they didn't break the bank to try to keep Jalen Naylor. What do they do there? Are they going to get a Darnell Mooney or somebody who is a fill-in type player for that spot and then draft someone? I am in favor of drafting someone I think the second round of this draft is going to have a lot of good wide receiver talent. I'd like to see them think about it there in the second round. So does Felton get his chance or not? I don't know. We have seen players like him emerge though, in that role specifically with Jefferson and Addison as wide receiver 1 and 2. Doomer KO, the best time to do the O'Neal extension after the draft. I don't know when the best time is probably whenever he wants to sign the extension. I think that he can continue to be a top 10 right tackle for the next 3 years. So you just stick with that. Romeo Doubs, I'm intrigued by Romeo Doubs because I think in a wide receiver 3 role, he'd be awesome, but I'm also wondering what the league is going to pay for him. And I'm curious what the Athletic has for his. I wonder about what do they have for his projection? They projected him at 4 years, $61 million. So I don't think that they're going to go that direction. I think it would be much more along the lines of a Hollywood Brown, like a 1-year type of deal, and then maybe draft someone and take an approach of a bunch of different people competing and see if Ty Felton becomes the guy. And just, it's funny. A lot of you are kind of agreeing with the point of, yeah, they need to be patient and yeah, they need to take their time, but what the hell is up with that Ty Felton? It's like, wait a minute. And look, patience doesn't solve all the problems. It doesn't. It doesn't mean every one of these guys would have been the difference between 9 wins and 14 wins or something last year. It's just with someone like Ty Felton, you might need to see if it works. You might need to see if it works with Felton and not go out and get some other veteran because you believe that they're going to learn the offense quicker or something. You might need to give it a try. Well, the Vikings get all sorts of former Packers. That's like a tradition. He was in 4 games for the Vikings, but just as special teams, I don't remember him ever starting. Yeah, his first start, was in New England. Thank you. Vidarian Lowe. But I didn't remember him ever starting for the Vikings. Put some respect on Neil Lomax's game. On his name. Neil Lomax was, they were good then, I guess. Yeah. for a time. They were competitive. It's been a really long time. A very, very long time. Matt says mid-round OT makes sense. Yes, it does. They need even a swing tackle, though, for right now. Third and Nedry. I might just call you third and Nerdy because it makes a lot of sense. How about Nick Cross as a safety if Smith retires? I like that idea. And now I'm just curious about what the Athletic is projecting for all these guys that we're talking about. Because Cross was on my list. 3 years, 21 was the projection. Can you see that? I think you can kind of see that on the screen. Yeah, there it is. 3 years, 21 million for Cross. I would do that. Yeah, I would do that. If Harrison Smith is going to retire or if not, I mean, because the other options are Theo Jackson, Jay Ward. I like where Jay Ward is at. I think he could be a starter potentially. The way that he's developed has been impressive, but Cross played all of last season and was physical and is a good blitzer and I think fits well with what they want to do. If it was 3 years, 21 million, then go for it. Bradley, what did Naylor get? Was it 3 for 30? I think it was a little more than that, wasn't it? Was it? Sorry, here we go. 3 for 35 was what Jalen Naylor got. 3 for 35. Good deal for him. Great deal for him. I was on Vegas radio just before I popped on here. They were asking me, it was like, you can't say enough good things about a guy like Jalen Naylor who works really hard for it and was willing to do whatever it took. Never was asking for more footballs thrown in his direction. Just a really solid player who I think could have been better here if he had been given more opportunity, because when Addison was out in 2024, he played very well. And they probably could have given him the ball a little bit more, even on some of those handoffs or quick stuff. Just never really materialized because he was kind of a clear out type of player. But I would have liked to have seen him do that a little bit more when he was here. And I think in Las Vegas, when you look at their other wide receivers, he's going to get a lot of opportunity. And maybe Kirk will be the one who's throwing him the ball. Felton was a Kwesi move, cost us. Cam Scadaboo, I'm not that concerned about Cam Scadaboo. I mean, I think he was okay, but I didn't think I thought he was kind of a player that everybody likes, but I'm not sure that he was wildly above average. I totally agreed with the pick of Ty Felton. Exactly what I'm just saying is you have to give these things time and let them play out. Because on Jalen Naylor's first year, you wouldn't have said there was anything there. In his second year, you wouldn't have said anything is there. That's why whoever it was earlier that said you draft for a couple of years out, you're right. You draft for a couple of years out. And if he's Keenan McCardle's idea, then I like it because Keenan McCardle is very good. He's got a plan for these guys. And when were they supposed to play Felton? All the receivers were healthy last year. When was he supposed to play? Why isn't he in there? Why isn't he? Well, who was hurt? They were in there. The Magic Man, do we want Harrison back next year? I'm guessing overwhelming amount of fans do, and I agree. Well, the one concern that you have is just that you don't want to see it go bad for a player who's been that great. And there were some moments last year where I did kind of wonder, is it fading? And then the resurgence from Harrison in the second half of the year, like, oh yeah, okay, now he's back to 100% and this is the dude again. That was really fun to watch. And going back on tape each week and watching him mess with quarterbacks and watching him make plays, and the acceleration was still cooking, which was very good. And I thought this is great to watch, man. This is like when a 38-year-old baseball pitcher comes out and throws a gem. Like, how cool is that? When the guy, not the physical skill, but on the savvy, he's only throwing 92 out there, but he's still striking people out. It's great. If there's another step lost, that's pretty tough for Harrison Smith. But I also think that if he continues to play like he did in the second half of last year, the defense is just much better with him. It's just much, much more dynamic with him out there, making changes, making calls, blitzing. And if he felt good about where he came out of last season, then maybe he will come back this year. Blind Shadow, maybe Felton will be this year's KJ Osborne. He had 1 reception his rookie year. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Is Felton didn't do anything as a young player, and neither did Osborne. They always draft them a year before they really need them and then develop them. And it was week 1 against Cincinnati 2021, where KJ Osborne blew away his previous year's total because of opportunity also. They got him the football. Felton is an exciting talent with the football in his hands. It's just, you got to get him up to speed, ready to go to play next year and to compete for that wide receiver 3 spot. But I'm not down on somebody just because they were buried on the depth chart and have potential. And it does matter that he was very good at the gunning. It does matter. First of all, that's important for field position, which the Vikings were good at, but also it tells you something about the guy. It tells you he really wants it. It tells you he's willing to take kind of a beating there in order to really get there. Justin says, I think McCarthy and Murray together could be a good quarterback room. People just have to set aside their labels. Look, Kyler Murray, for whatever people want to say about him, and a lot of it's uninformed. And if you listen to the interview that I had the other day with the Cardinals analyst, one of the things that he pointed out was that the whole video game clause, or whatever people called it, about he must watch 4 hours of film or something, one of the reasons that was put out there was that the Cardinals, a tremendously successful organization with unbelievably wonderful leadership, put that out there as like a screw you to his agent because they were making life very difficult on the Cardinals in negotiations. So something that became synonymous with Kyler Murray was more the franchise acting like children, I guess. I mean, the Vikings have gone to battle with plenty of players over the years, and Rob Brzezinski's been at the center of that. They haven't leaked stuff out about their own player and tried to make him look bad in public. But of course, the guy who did that doesn't have his job anymore, and no one has hired him since. So he must be a wonderful general manager. I mean, I don't know. It's just that franchise and that whole thing. But Murray is a pro quarterback who has run multiple different types of offenses with relative success in the NFL. And with JJ McCarthy, well, I don't think that Kyler Murray, if he's the quarterback, would put his arm around him as far as he could get it. Short joke. I don't think he would put his arm around JJ McCarthy and say, brother, I'm going to help you learn the NFL. I think Kyler's coming here to become a franchise quarterback in Minnesota if he comes here. But I also think that going back to the sideline and seeing how Kyler operates the offense, and a lot more, I'm telling you, I've watched a lot more of it's in rhythm than you think. You think of him because of his most highlight spectacular plays scrambling around. Way more of it. I've shown you the numbers about 2.5 seconds. I've watched it back. Just go watch. Just go watch a full game. Just for the heck of it. If you got time. Do it while you're driving. No, I'm kidding. That's a joke. But just go back. Like, watch. You want to see an imperfect but good Kyler Murray game? Watch week 1 against the Saints. Watch how a lot of it's in rhythm, and then sometimes he's amazing, and sometimes he drives you crazy, and that's Kyler Murray. And that's most of his stuff. But much more of it is take the snap, couple step drop back, let go of the football, a lot more than you think when you think of Kyler Murray. So I think that McCarthy, who wants to be a playmaker, watching Kyler Murray, even if it's learning some stuff not to do from Kyler, would be really beneficial. And I also just think every single day, healthy. How many months has JJ McCarthy over the last couple of years been able to put together months where he could say, here's what I worked on, dropping back, setting myself the right way, and throwing with proper technique to both sides of the field and the middle of the field, timing with wide receivers. How many months has he been able to do that? He missed 6 months due to the meniscus injury and then was recovering. Then he's right into OTAs as QB1 and minicamp as QB1. So you're not really developing at that point because you're learning the offense and trying to be the starting quarterback. He gets 2 weeks, then it's 5 weeks gone. He gets a couple more weeks, then it's another week out. Then he comes back, gets a couple more weeks, then it's a half a game and a half a game. How many weeks, how many months he could finally stack up from the end of last season all the way through an entire year of trying to get better at this while he's healthy and not trying to play catch up all the time. That's why I think it would be better for him. Aaron says, didn't Romeo Dobbs have a mental health thing in the middle of the year last year like he was AWOL? I don't recall that. I think that was last year. I think that was in 2024. I don't know if it was a mental health thing. I honestly don't know. but I know that there was an issue with him and maybe the team. And I recall the incident, but I don't remember exactly what that was about. Is there a deadline for Harrison Smith? I don't know that either. If there's a deadline, is he working on a new deal with the Vikings? And that's why they're not making a move here? Or could we get something really soon? Has he not told them? We just don't know. We did not have really time with all the other things to ask about at the combine. Had there not been, a GM firing and quarterback issues and all that sort of stuff, that probably would have been on the list to find out where Harrison Smith stands, but I don't know. Johnny says these Murray haters are the same people who hated Darnold. They think that JJ is better. They're crazy. Well, yeah, I mean, there's no stacking the two up against each other in terms of resumes and even talent. I mean, Kyler Murray's a number 1 overall pick. Like, he's more talented. But the similarity, is from last year. I don't blame anyone who wants, and this is what you should say. Like, before you make your Murray argument, just say, hey, I really want JJ to succeed. So this is kind of why I'm saying this. Because there are very reasonable critiques of Kyler Murray. There are definitely reasonable critiques watching him back, and I'm happy to discuss them because I have now watched a lot of it back and looked at all the data and everything. But I never would blame anybody for wanting to hang on to, I really want JJ McCarthy to succeed. Because when you go back through the last, let's just even call it 10 years. Let's even call it since I arrived as a major moment in Viking history. No, I'm just joking, but my perspective is fine with the entire history, but I've been here for 10 years, which gives you a nice sampling of what it's been like for Vikings fans. I arrive here, Teddy gets hurt. He's supposed to be your guy. And even though there were people who would say Teddy doesn't throw enough touchdowns or whatever, here's what you all knew. He could win. You could win with him. He was kind of like a Bo Nix type discussion where is it going to light your pants on fire to watch him? No, but you can get there if you got a good enough team. And Teddy did that, put him in position to win a playoff game. You know what happened, but they should have won the playoff game. And then going into 16, Teddy's looking improved in training camp. Teddy is looking improved with the arm strength. And there's a couple throws against the Chargers in the preseason game where you go, okay, he's taken a step forward and he's ready to go. And then you're thrown into total, utter madness with Sam Bradford showing up here with a 2-year contract, but then getting hurt, then Case Keenum, then Kirk Cousins. And every year you're asking, do you really want to keep going forward with Kirk Cousins? You get through that and finally to the guy. And this is there are people who have followed this team since Fran Tarkenton or Joe Kapp who have been watching them play this game with the quarterback position for decades and decades. But even if you're watching it for the last 10 years, even if you're 17 years old and your entire life of watching the Vikings is hoping for a franchise quarterback that you feel like your franchise is really locked into, because it never felt that way with Kirk Cousins, even from day one. It felt like, mercenary type of quarterback who is here as long as he'll keep getting paid. And the team always hemmed and hawed about whether they wanted to extend him and then gave him short extensions and didn't really publicly say he's our true franchise quarterback and things like that. So you've dealt with this whiplash at quarterback this whole time. Why would you not want JJ to be the guy? And I remember saying that to Drew McGarry on the show, a huge Vikings fan, great writer, last year before the season. And it was like, they finally got to the spot that they never get to. And then to have it feel like it never happened. It just was a failure to launch. It never happened. It was like 2 games and then it's gone. And then he comes back and has this exciting game against the Lions and then it's gone. And then it's over. And then you're looking around. I can totally understand this. Then you're looking around going, wait, it's over? How could it be over? It just started. It never even got a chance. I feel you when it comes to that. The way I look at it is if someone is not had that much time to develop and is that far behind where McCarthy was, where you need to be as an NFL quarterback, And we're not going to play the game of, well, if you do this stat and that stat and you carry the one and you squint and you only look at it with one eye, it's fine. No, we know what happened last year. Then you do have to, as the Vikings, go get a different option for this season. But I understand why a lot of people would not want to grab onto that and say, all right, let's go on to the next retread quarterback. Totally understand it, because it feels like there's always a cap on that. And with JJ, it didn't feel like that. It didn't feel like, oh, well, there's a limitation here. You can only go so far. This can only work out so well, which has kind of been the case in the past. Maurice, how you feel about Keaton Mitchell? Love that idea. Absolutely love that idea. He is blazing fast. You guys are funny. He is blazing fast. And everybody in Baltimore who I follow and who I've talked to is just sort of perplexed at why they didn't give the ball to Keaton Mitchell more often. At his speed, sub 4.4, explosive, it's game speed. Really like it. As a duo with Jordan Mason, you need to find somebody to pass protect, but that's the kind of lightning explosiveness that I think they should be looking for. Doomer KO. If no one watches the Cardinals, did any Cardinals history happen? And Bradley says, do it. Watch the film while you're texting and driving at the same time. Do not do that. Jay, KOC will draft in 26 to start now. His job is on the hot seat. Well, is KOC totally in command of the draft, or because Rob Brzezinski has final say. So if they wanted to trade up, hey, we're going to send next year's second round pick up to get Jeremiah Love, does Rob Brzezinski say, hold on now, we're not doing that, because that's going to be a major sacrifice to the future? He does have those keys in his hand. He did confirm that for us at the Combine. And I thought that was the biggest revelation of the Combine, was that he said, yeah, I can slam the gavel and say, okay, we're not doing that. Jared said, I've called myself a professional Kyler Murray hater over the years. Over the past couple weeks, I've learned that compared to most people, I'm a big fan of Kyler. Well, it's just about put some respect on Dan Deerdorf's name. Thank you. Third and nerdy. You deserve a Burrow trade for this. Yeah, I think so. Isaiah says, what do you think about Jerome Ford? He's only 26. Okay, I didn't know he's only 26. It feels like there's a world where they can get someone like Keaton Mitchell, who I think would be more of an impact player, and someone like Ford or Emmanuel Wilson, who is under the just a guy, but you could definitely play them in games. And he feels like that. And that looks like what's going to end up having to happen. You'd prefer someone in the Latavius Murray kind of range that you could play for 150 snaps or 150 rushes and feel good about them and have him pass protect. In fact, what's Latavius up to? He could still ball, right? But in terms of drafting for need now, this is what I'll keep saying, is that they could draft anything and it will qualify as a need. I mean, truly, other than trading up for Jeremiah Love, they could draft just about anything, because they haven't filled needs in free agency. And even if they go out and get Keaton Mitchell, even if they go out and get some of the guys, you mentioned Nick Cross doesn't negate Dylan Thieneman, or a James Pierre does not negate, Avion Terrell. I don't know of any position that they could sign from here on out, because there's just not enough big names that they could sign where I'd go, okay, well, they're definitely not drafting X, Y, or Z. I'm not sure there's anybody outside of, I don't know, like Trey Hendrickson or something. If you're, I think that a lot of people struggle to be, there was a friend of mine who used to say that everyone is wrong about Cam Newton, because the people who liked Cam Newton thought that he was flawless, just untouchable, best quarterback in the league. If you don't like Cam Newton, you're just a terrible person. And then there were other people who thought Cam Newton was terrible and just, I'd never want that guy. He's, a bad leader, which of course was wrong. Jeremiah Searles played with him, by the way, is wrong. or he's too much flash, or he can't throw well enough, or whatever. He took a team to a Super Bowl. He's an MVP. He's an incredible football player, but he was not perfect. And I kind of look at that with Kyler Murray. Like, everybody is kind of a little wrong about Kyler Murray. I mean, if you think that Murray is this home run number 1 overall draft pick who is basically the most exciting player to ever take a snap, well, you're wrong about that. And there are some folks, I suppose, who are really on the Arizona side willing to just apologize for anything Kyler Murray did, because now showing up in my feed all the time on social media, unfortunately, in a time like this, I have to be on social media nonstop, so I kind of see everything, and there's a lot of over-defending Kyler Murray in Arizona. But if you think that he's not a top 15 quarterback, then you're probably just either ill-informed or haven't paid much attention, or just want JJ McCarthy to start, because that's what the facts would indicate. So it's everybody's kind of wrong about Kyler. Third and Nerdy says, Kirk drove me crazy for years. I can handle Kyler driving you crazy. Yeah, I mean, it's going to drive you crazy in a different way. It's going to drive you crazy in the, hey man, why didn't you throw that? Although that happened with Kirk a lot. It's going to drive you crazy in, just for example, the last game I watched was the opener 2025. There's a play where his offense, for some reason, actually there's multiple plays in this game, completely leaves somebody unblocked. I don't know what happened. Just didn't have the right protection, or I don't know. Someone comes completely unblocked. Kyler thinks that he can duck them and run away, and he can't, and he gets like a 15-yard loss. It's similar to what Sam Darnold would do sometimes, where he runs backwards, and that can just blow up in your face. So that's the kind of drive you crazy that's going to happen there. You said sometime, yeah, that's what I mean about, well, sometimes, I mean, JJ McCarthy, that drove people crazy as well. Bradley, I watched Arizona play. Kyler could be exciting. Bradley is the first one here to have watched Kyler actually play. Thank you, Bradley. I joke, but I do have some suggestions for people if you are interested in the highest end of Kyler Murray. His game against San Francisco last year was really good. You want to see something insane? His game against the Los Angeles Rams at the beginning of 2024 is insane. It's mind-blowing to watch that game. So that's in there. And that's what at least makes you intrigued. Jude said, if no one good is there, it would trade down a couple spots. Hope you can still get the safety out of Oregon. Dylan Thieneman is who you're talking about there. I like the idea. I think it would be a great fit in Flores' defense. I'm really interested to see, and he goes for, even if they brought in a veteran safety, they could still draft Thieneman because he has versatility positionally, and they're going to need that. He could play up in the slot. I mean, when you run a sub 4.4, and he's got a lot of range too, you can play up in the slot, and they need that. Son of a Beavers, do you think that the Vikings might have a trade in place for an RB2, seeing how most of the better running backs are off the market? They might have to, or they might have to go with kind of one of those rolls of the dice. Let's take a look here. Let's go over here and take a look at the remaining running backs. If we can do that. It might just take a bunch of scrolling. Can I just search running back? Let me see if I can just search running back. Can I do that? Kinda. It's taking me all over the place. Well, that didn't work out as well as I had hoped. Oh, well, kind of. Gainwell already went to the Bucks. Kareem Hunt. Oof. Yeah, the number of running backs who are available is just, I think I'm going to have to scroll, is just really underwhelming at the moment. So they may have to, oh, there's position. Huh. You guys were probably telling me in the chat, just click position. There we go. I'm on the Athletics free agency tracker, by the way. So here we got Walker, ETN, Rico Dowdle have already signed. White is still out there. Algier, Dobbins, Gainwell have signed. Aaron Jones, probably not coming back. Then you get into this group, Emmanuel Wilson, who their projection is 2 years to $7.5 million. I mean, he's a guy. And Michael Carter, and then Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco. That is very uninspiring. So if it's not Rachaad White, that is very uninspiring for who they could potentially get. So you're right. They might have to go the trade route, or they might have to go the draft route. They did keep Xavier Scott today. Should mention that. Those who are newsletter subscribers probably saw my sit down with Xavier Scott last year. Really interesting guy. New Hampshire wide receiver to NFL running back is quite a journey. And I will say, he did surprise when it came to pass protection. He might be that guy. He's actually pretty big for a former wide receiver. He might be the guy they have to use. They might have to get Emmanuel Wilson or Pacheco or somebody. And then it's just not very inspiring. What you'd like to see them do is get somebody who can really move. And maybe that's Mike Washington Jr. from Arkansas in the 3rd round or something. Get somebody who's really darn fast. Or if you get them, then use them, unlike Ty Chandler, for example. 3rd and nerdy. JJ is going to figure it out. Patience is hard. Vikings pumped those tires too big, too fast. And they just didn't give themselves any sort of option. They had no other choice. They get into training camp and it looks okay, and they were excited about it. I mean, anybody who says, oh, well, what did you reporters see? Well, I mean, they were pretty excited about. Go watch KOC's press conference after the joint practice. Tell me he's not really pumped about what he just saw from JJ McCarthy. And the other teammates, I mean, the same teammates who eventually would have been saying things about how great Sam Darnold was, they were, I think, fine with the way that JJ McCarthy was playing. And I don't know that anyone thought it was going to go as bad as it did when they were watching him. So yes, too big, too fast, asking too much of him is 100% true. But also it's hard to evaluate these things when you only have practice. You don't have real games with real game plans and real rush plans and real, different types of coverages and stuff like that. And the timing is different because everyone's running faster than they are in practice. There's no emulating that. Bradley McCarthy needs a mentor type. Yeah. I don't think Kyler is that. I think that Kyler is trying to be a superstar. And one thing I've heard about Kyler is that you may say whatever you're going to say about 4 or 5 years ago when he came into the league, that he is very, very, very competitive. And I think that he wants to prove people wrong, which seems like at $1.3 million, a pretty good situation. 3rd and nerdy. Teddy was underappreciated. I mean, for years, I saw Teddy jerseys still at games, a lot of them. And at camp practices that fans would be at, I'd see Teddy jerseys all over the place. I really do think that he was beloved by the mass majority of people, and not the handful of trolls that didn't like his touchdown total. They were 7th in the league in 2015 in scoring percentage, in finishing drives with points. And that's Teddy, right? Like, not turning the ball over, making some plays, keeping the ball on the track. They had a terrible offensive line. They ran Adrian a lot. It would have been really interesting to see what they would have become when they spent the money on the O-line that was made for Case Keenum eventually, but that would have been for Teddy when they actually went out and rebuilt that offensive line. And also, Teddy never got the chance to have Thielen and Diggs become Thielen and Diggs. That would have been something else too. David, this team needs to get younger across the board, and everything they're doing is through that prism. A Grenard trade probably gives us 2 more picks and should get done. Getting younger helps the cap. I have no problem with the Grenard trade if that's what they want to do. If he's pushing them for a much bigger contract and they don't want to do that and they don't want to lock in at that dollar figure, they don't have that dollar figure, then moving him is a reasonable thing to do and draft another edge rusher. It does put you in a position where, oh boy, Dallas Turner's got to take a step up. Van Ginkel's got to take a step up. You probably have to go find another. And this may be what the holdup is for signing players. I mean, if you trade Grenard, I think it's like $20 million on the cap that you get that you could spend. So you have to maybe work around some of these moving parts that are not solidified in place yet. Whether you're trading Jonathan Grenard would be a major, major moving part. but it's kind of goes back to, if you guys remember Moneyball, when they lost Jason Giambi and Billy Beane's talking about, well, how can we find that same production with a bunch of different players? That's what it would have to be if you lose Jonathan Grenard to a trade. And down the road, those draft picks and that cap space play into that. So can you draft a guy and get production right away? Can you find someone who's a little later down still in the free agent market who can take some of that? And then Dallas Turner and Andrew Van Ginkel, and maybe, I don't know, whatever player is on the roster right now at edge. I mean, they brought back Bo Richter. I'm not sure I expect that to be him. He's a very good special teamer, but I don't know if he's going to be a depth edge player at some point. You never know. He could continue to develop, but you probably need a veteran player who's cheap and a rookie and Turner. And can you cobble together that type of production? And it's going to be hard because Grenard is a star Pro Bowl level type player, but I don't know that it's impossible. It's impossible if he's Micah Parsons. I don't know if it's impossible if you have draft capital and money to spend that you can add up to what Jonathan Grenard gives you. So that is a better long-term type of move. Justin, they should have won that playoff game. They sure should have. Magic Man, he was overappreciated by Zimmer. Disagree. He was not overappreciated. It's proof that Zimmer could love a quarterback. Every person I've ever, that was personal with Zimmer and Teddy Bridgewater. And I mean, in a good way, that every person I've ever run across has talked about Teddy Bridgewater and how special of a person he is. So it's kind of like Aaron Jones when we talk about him, where there are people who are just special and they impact other people in so many positive ways and are selfless and are leaders. And I don't know, it's probably something you're just born with. And Zimmer loved that. He loved that. So I don't think he overappreciated. I think that he understood that leadership, toughness, selflessness, all those things are tools for a quarterback, that even if you don't have the best arm or you don't have, the fastest legs or whatever, you could still win a lot of football games. And I mean, Case Keenum was kind of the same way, and they won a lot of football games with him as well. Only Teddy was more talented than that. So yeah, I mean, if you're going to be the anti-Teddy person, it's just, we can't even talk. I'm just going to think you don't really know what you're talking about. If you watched the games in 2015, you saw how little talent they had on the offensive line, how much they were committed to the run, how much they played to win the game. This is something that you complain about all the time with KOC, and sometimes it's reasonable, of playing to win that game that Sunday, not playing to have X number of passing stats or whatever sexy play, or to put the dagger deep pass on 3rd and 1 into the other team's heart or something. Teddy played to win the game. And also, I mean, when you talk about his talent, he's a first-round talent because that's where he was taken. So that's what we know. If you're saying, well, he's not talented enough, no, well, he was taken the first round. Not the top of the first round, but that's what your talent is. That's what the scouts looked at and the franchise looked at and decided on your talent. Kyler Murray is a talent of a number 1 overall draft pick. JJ McCarthy is a 10th overall draft pick. Like, I know it's not all the same every single year, but your slot tells us a lot about the raw talent and expectation. So if you're taken in the first round then you're a starting quarterback caliber prospect. And he played like a starting quarterback for 2 seasons. He didn't play like a superstar starting quarterback, but he was on the ascension and you never got to see it, which is why I think it's so hard for people with JJ McCarthy. I think there's a tie in there because just as Dante Culpepper has his best year, then he gets hurt. And just as Teddy Bridgewater is ascending, gets hurt. And here's JJ McCarthy, just as they move on from a 14-win quarterback for him, believing in him, gets hurt. That's tough. Not a Twerk says, I think saying number 1 overall pick is a bit disingenuous. No, it's not. It's not disingenuous. He was a number 1 overall pick. I mean, yes, there were not that many other quarterbacks in that draft. Daniel Jones was taken pretty high, and it's not a good quarterback draft. And yes, Garrett Bradbury was a first-round talent. He has not turned out to be a star, but he's also turned out to be, he's going to start in the NFL as a starting center for a lot of successful teams for a decade, and you guys act like he's garbage. It's kind of not really fair to him. 18 overall is kind of right for a guy who's not perfect, but is a starter. When it comes to Kyler Murray, number one overall is number one overall, man. I mean, he was one of the great overall talents in college football coming out. He was one of the greatest high school players to ever play football. He is a 4.3 type of speed player. When he was coming out, an MLB caliber arm, could throw the ball, 95 miles an hour or something. I mean, you're way underrating Kyler Murray's natural talents if you're not talking about how he was the first overall draft pick, because they wouldn't have done it if he wasn't worth it. Teams, as you've seen from Shedeur Sanders and others and Malik Willis, if they don't believe in it, they won't do it most of the time. Based Kirby missed the whole first season, hurt 4 times in the second year. Laughing stock meme of the league. Gives Jetta his worst season. He belongs selling solar panels. See, that's too far. That's too far, Kirby. I didn't know where you were headed with all that. The meme thing means nothing to me. Doesn't matter at all to me that they memed him. They meme Sam Darnold. It doesn't matter. They meme everyone. Every person in sports is just the biggest joke ever to the internet. So if you pay attention to the internet, as long as you're not a 7-time champion or something, but the internet makes fun of Tom Brady. If Tom Brady gives an interview and he says something that people don't like, they'll meme Tom Brady. So people are just incredibly mean and basic on the internet. The lowest common denominator type of humor. I think it's more complex than that with JJ McCarthy, but those other things you said are fair. I mean, you can't. Justin Jefferson's the whole thing, right? It's the canary in the coal mine. It's like, yeah, you could talk about the offensive line and there was a lot of combinations. Hey, go look. They weren't the only team with that. Yeah, you could talk about Jordan Addison dropped the ball. Jets had a couple of drops for sure. But I mean, not being able to consistently connect, even in a way that was close to Carson Wentz, is like, you're just not ready. You're just not ready to do this because the offenses in the NFL are built around the superstars. That's why Sam Darnold had so much success throwing to Jackson Smith-Njigba and Justin Jefferson. Look, Kirk made a career out of this. Kirk Cousins' career is throwing to Deshaun Jackson and then Diggs and Thielen and Pierre Garçon, I should throw in, and Vernon Davis, and then Justin Jefferson. And he was a Pro Bowl level quarterback and a very good one for many years because he just got the ball to his guys. David getting younger and being deep at the quarterback position with Wentz is probably number 3, is something that the Wilfs are also non-negotiable on. Well, sure. I'd like to see Carson Wentz back as the backup. And they've gotten, KOC's been here for 4 years. They've gotten to QB3 twice. 50% of the time they've gotten to QB3. I mean, man. Friends of Taz says, if the Vikings made the Super Bowl with McCarthy as a starter, he'd be the second youngest ever to start a Super Bowl. That's next season. His age and his situation are, for me, great arguments to have him develop next year. He has thrown less than 1,000 passes since high school. He has been injured many times now. He has not learned to play this game. He's not been on the field enough to learn to play this game. Give him a chance to learn to play this game. Yeah, the youth argument is totally valid for why he should get time to develop. Just like, I mean, I'm just going to keep using the Malik Willis because I think there's a lot of similarities with them. I know Willis was a 3rd-round pick and that's a 3rd-round talent, but the similarities are raw talent that needed development. And he got there. And if you want a better one is for a 1st-rounder, it's probably Jordan Love. Oh, Devin Lloyd signing with Carolina. That's a big move. Carolina's going in, man. Not a twerk. What about punters? I think when it comes to punter, they're going to just have a competition and try to find the next Ryan Wright. Might not be easy. Couple of college undrafted free agents. Jay, I assume you mean Tay Train, meaning Latavius Murray was fun as celebration. He's a really good player. Yep. He was a really, really good player. Scott, why can't we live in the universe that we drafted Lamar in 2018? Some of us suggested it. Some of us did suggest it. Some of us, just saying. I know. And that's a reason to take every possible shot at the quarterback position. That if you just lock into this is the guy and we're good, then he better work. Otherwise, you should be taking multiple shots. You should be signing Kirk and drafting Lamar Jackson because the Kirk contract was so short. I think it was 2 years and then the option for the third or something like that. It was so short that why wouldn't you pick a development quarterback? That would have been the Green Bay picks Lamar, right? In that situation, Green Bay picks Lamar. This is a good question because they keep succeeding with this. Not only did Green Bay, we only ever give credit to Green Bay for Favre and for Rodgers and for Love. But we don't even talk about how Green Bay had Matt Hasselbeck, Mark Brunell, Aaron Brooks, and now Malik Willis. I'm sure there's some in the middle that I'm forgetting about, but teams stopped keeping 3 quarterbacks and that became more complicated. But even now, here they are again because they have patience. They have a lot of options and they have a lot of patience with their quarterbacks and they develop them. And if you asked, what would Green Bay, the most successful quarterback franchise of our lifetimes, what would they do with JJ McCarthy? I mean, you know the answer. It's develop him. Todd said the Cardinal radio guy last week was reasoned in his analysis of Kyler Murray. And that's what I'm just asking for people is listen to that interview for one, because he just did such a great job of laying it all out where he said, you know what? There were times where Jacoby Brissett ran the offense on time and I went, man, could we just do that? And that's frustrating. But then also that if you're in the right situation with the right offense with Kyler Murray, and if you have the supporting cast, I mean, he called Cliff Kingsbury a gym teacher. He said, look, Kyler has just never been coached by a real coach. And Petzing, I think, is good, but it was his first time. And Gannon, it was his first time. This is KOC's 5th year as a head coach. And let's also remember, there's something that's kind of bugged me about the KOC stuff. Like, just like with Kyler or with McCarthy, but especially with Kyler, or it would go this way with Kirk sometimes. Like, let's go to a certain level of truth, but let's not forget that this person is very good. Kevin O'Connell won the Super Bowl as an offensive coordinator and has had 2 seasons where they've had 13 or more wins. And people act like if he gets a quarterback that does different stuff, he will just go jump in Lake Minnetonka. Like he's just, I can't do it. I couldn't possibly figure out a way. Drew Petzing had no experience as a play caller at all, and no experience whatsoever. And he takes over and has some success with Kyler Murray. Jonathan Gannon had never been a head coach before, and he has some success, didn't on the defensive side, but some success with Kyler Murray. Cliff Kingsbury had never been a coach in the NFL before and had some success with Kyler Murray. Do we not think this is the best with Josh McCown, the best coaching staff that he would have? Do we not think this is the best supporting cast? The offensive line, if it's healthy, the receivers, the tight end. I mean, the tight end was good there. Trey McBride, very good. But I mean, is this not the best situation supporting cast? I mean, I think it would be by kind of a lot. And he laid that out, but he also said he's going to frustrate you at times. And he did lay it out that he's not going to take hits or stand in there. He's going to try to escape. He's going to throw the ball away. He's going to check it down. And those things are going to frustrate you. Son of Beavers. The reason I didn't mention Tyreek Woolen is because I just felt like he's going to get paid too much. But the other guys that you mentioned, Nick Cross, Rashad White, Logan Hill, all on my list. Jay, what would you do if Kyler goes to Pittsburgh? I would shut down the channel and I would never appear again. I just talk about the next option. That's what would I do? The same thing I'm doing right now. They didn't even make a dang move and I'm going to end up doing 6 hours of podcasting today. I just keep going. We'll just on to the next thing. What would they do is really the question. What I would do was nothing different. I mean, I've covered it all. I've covered the NFC Championship game and I've covered the worst, 6 months of anyone's life in the COVID football season, where it was me and Courtney and Judd in masks having to sit 10 feet away from each other in an empty football stadium. And it was horrible. So trust me, I'll carry on. But when it comes to them, what would they do? I think if Kyler Murray on Wednesday tells the Vikings, hey, I'm going to go to Pittsburgh, then you call Geno Smith, are you coming here? And if Geno Smith says I'm going to the Jets, then you're probably on to Kirk or Aaron Rodgers. And it might be Aaron Rodgers. And Rodgers might be, he is not at all committed to anything. That might happen. I mean, if it's not Kyler and it's not Geno, then you might go Aaron Rodgers instead of Kirk, just because the arm talent is still there and both of them have been wounded. I don't know which one I would go with. It seems kind of the same, but Rodgers at least could have some crazy throws that might be really fun to watch. Once you get past Geno, it gets bleak. It gets bleak. In fact, I might just go Joe Flacco and start JJ McCarthy if it's not Geno or Kyler Murray, because I don't know that either one of those other options. Yeah, Justin makes a great point. That's what's been a little odd to me. That's why I think that the Kyler stuff is more about people still wanting McCarthy. Is every time Kyler's played against this team, he's been good. He's been dangerous. Crack Yaters. I don't think Kyler's worth it if it means giving up on JJ. What if it means JJ gets a better situation for his chances to succeed? That's how I would view it. I would not view it as giving up, and not unless they trade him. But even then, and I get why no one wants to give up on him. From a historical and statistical perspective, it's justifiable. But I still think it's better to take your time and see what happens, and not over concern yourself with, well, what happens in 2 years with the rookie contract? You can't project that far out. We always try to do that, but we really can't. We really can't look that far out in the future. BM, I've convinced my sons to become Seahawks fans before the season, and it was a joy to watch them win the Super Bowl. You didn't convince yourself of that. Hines Bucks. Darnold was the QB. Couldn't have drawn up anybody more perfect for Kevin O'Connell. That is true. Complicated situation, but ultimately, yes. Trent says, remember the Texas OU game where Kyler replaced Spencer Rattler? Oh, yeah. I mean, Kyler has explosiveness as a runner that is crazy rare still. And he has accuracy as a thrower that is excellent. I mean, he can put it on a dime pretty much anywhere on the field that he wants to. What's a little concerning is that he doesn't rip the downfield passes the way he did early in his career. And there is a throw early on in 2025 film where he's got a guy over the middle and he tries to kind of let it go and airmails him a little bit. And it's not wild. It just doesn't fly 100 yards over his head, but you're like, that's a throw he used to kind of make. And I've wondered about some of the foot and the leg injuries, if they've taken their toll on him driving off of his feet, because you need to be able to do that and off your legs. So there are concerns in that way. Scott says, all I want for McCarthy is to run a scout team for a calendar year. I agree. Jared says, I've become fully obsessed with the Vikes drafting Thieneman. Not sure if it's spelled right. It doesn't matter. I knew who you meant. He's very, very talented. And I've started to watch one of the things that I really like. I don't consider myself a very good college film watcher. And because with the Vikings film, I've been watching Vikings all 22 stuff for 10 years. And I've been bringing on Cody Alexander and Bobby Peters and these X's and O's experts. And so I feel comfortable. I don't feel like I know all the plays, that's for sure, but I feel comfortable with watching NFL film and watching the Vikings and listening to KOC and listening to the players and looking at the data and putting it all together and trying to form conclusions about players and what's happened and that sort of stuff. When I watch college film, I'm like, what is this? Because it's so different. And a lot of times it's hard to find actual film on guys. So you're watching back a game and you're kind of like, where is he? So what I'll do is I'll find the people who I really like that are good at watching film. Chris Trapasso watches a ton of film, is so good at it. He's got Thieneman, I think, is his safety one. I think he believes that he's the best safety in this class because Downs is more of a in the box guy and he likes the versatility and the range of Thieneman, and I don't blame him for that. If they draft Dylan Thieneman, you no complaints for me. The safety positional value I wonder about, but in this defense, I think it works. He feels like he was made in a lab for Brian Flores. Don, that's funny. If Murray plays average, it'll feel like greatest show on turf. I have to admit, we're almost 3 hours into this. I texted a friend of mine in the league as I was watching Kyler Murray play, and I did say, am I watching prime Vic in comparison to what we saw? It was painful. And that's not just on JJ. It was painful to watch Carson Wentz. It was painful to watch Max Brosmer. This was one of the worst passing offenses in the league. If they're even good, you can win a lot of games. Jared, you like Emmanuel Wilson? I'm good with Emmanuel Wilson. You're not a fan of Rashad White, huh? I would like him. No, you said unless you'd like him to be a pass catcher. That's what I would like him to be. Tech, are we cooked for 2026? Not looking good. Is KOC on the hot seat? KOC certainly has a ton of pressure on him this year. I don't think anyone would deny that. And are you cooked? I mean, here's why I would never, ever count out this team. Because in 2024, 6.5 wins was their over-under. And they won 14. And their quarterback was coming here from being a backup with a guy who had a reputation of being one of the biggest busts ever. And I'm not going to count that. I'm not going to be like, oh, no chance. Totally cooked. People like to say cooked. It's fun to say. I admit it's fun to say. This guy's cooked. It's fun to say, but you never know. Seattle, what was Seattle? Seattle was not a favorite to win the Super Bowl going into this season. Not at all. People didn't believe in Darnold. Go back from a year. They signed Darnold. What did everyone say? I'm sure it'll be fine with Seattle, but he's not that great. That's what most people said. Every big game, he'll melt down. That's what people said. So I'm not going to say cooked because it's football. You never know. The FanDuel question of the day, by the way, was, I think, what was it? I started bringing out the FanDuel question of the day at like noon today. It was, what team do you think should have moved their odds the most? Let me get an answer. Let me take a look. Today, what team moved their odds to win their division the most today? I congratulate the Jets on all of their moves. They are not the answer. Baltimore trading for Max Crosby, but not today. The answer, that's not today. The Bengals definitely helped themselves. Did I see they got Boye Mafe for a big contract? Pittsburgh still doesn't have a quarterback. Cleveland still Cleveland. Jacksonville losing ETN, but I don't know if that moves the needle. Colts, I'm not really sure if they did anything to move the needle. Kansas City signing Kenneth Walker may have helped their case. I don't know if it totally did, though. And I don't think what the Raiders did changed everything for them to win their division. Dallas trading for Rashawn Gary, maybe a little bit. I don't know if that helps them as much. Washington, possibly. But Odafe Owe, I just think is kind of overrated. What team? This is a good question because I'm trying to answer it. I'm not really sure. It might be Carolina. Carolina, with their huge defensive additions, probably moved the needle the most. Plus 470 right now to win the division. They're fourth for their odds. I think they should be much higher than that. Atlanta should drop down after signing Tua. I just don't see how that's going to work. The Rams signing Watson, getting McDuffie. It's not exactly today. Probably helped their case. Maybe San Francisco at plus 340. It's a good question. Which team helped their odds the most to win their division with their moves today? KO's never cared about the running room. Yeah, I mean, I think that not investing in at least some more draft capital into the running backs in the middle rounds is probably a mistake. I mean, what did they draft? They drafted Chandler and then kind of looked like that was going to be a thing and then did not become a thing. And they drafted the running back from UAB, who I'm struggling, Dwayne McBride. Did they draft anybody else in the backfield? I mean, you're right. The investment just hasn't been there. Aaron Jones was a big investment for them, but it was someone that they could trust. And Jones was good, but he was not explosive. Not it's works as hindsight 2020, but go back and look at McCarthy throwing at the combine. You got to question why they were all so excited about, or what they were so excited about. I think what they were excited about was arm strength clearly there, athleticism and playmaking clearly there. But what they bought into, and this was brought up after drafting him, I think what they bought into was trajectory. And they believed that his trajectory would just continue to ascend because he was so young. You just don't really know whether that's going to happen. And you still don't know because he is still so young that his trajectory could be on the upswing if he actually gets a chance to be healthy for an entire year. When was the last time he was healthy for an entire year? Rob watched Patriots podcast after the joint practice. So did I. They were depressed at how much McCarthy outplayed Drake May. Yes, I mean, I have several friends on that beat. Chad Graff is one of my good friends, and we talked a lot about it after that. Well, man, like the Vikings looked like so much better of a team than the Patriots. This is why you don't know, and this is why next year I will definitely put some warnings on the joint practice breakdowns of, hey, last year this didn't matter that much. Rob, think Kyler might be a surprising mentor to McCarthy. That is true. You mentioned the gaming generation. Just the other night, by the way, you know who was live streaming and somebody screen captured something he said? Jamar Chase. So Kyler was just a little ahead of his time with the gaming. All these players are gaming. A lot of these players are live streaming. A lot of these players are podcasting. Micah Parsons has a freaking podcast. And it's annoying probably for his team to find out about stuff on his podcast, but he's not just only pumping iron 24/7. He's trying to do other stuff too. Draymond Green has a podcast that he shouldn't, but he does. A lot of players have a lot of other interests, and that was thrown in his face specifically, I think because he had a bad organization more than anything, who didn't want to take responsibility for their own failures to build around him and put the proper coaching and the proper roster around him. And they wanted to blame him. And that's what happens. And you already saw that, right? When a quarterback doesn't win, fingers get pointed. Does that sound familiar? I will find out the name of the new punter when you do, when the punter battle happens in camp. We will get our punter battle. I will have my justice for a punter battle. Although Ryan Wright turned out to be great and Matt Daniels was right all along. Scott is explosive. Xavier Scott. Yeah, I like Xavier Scott. I think that he's versatile, and I think he can be a third down back for them. Third and nerdy. Dobbins re-signed in Denver. Oh, I didn't mention Dobbins. Yeah, he re-signed. Yep. He was another one that's kind of interesting. I mean, most of the running backs came off the board. They're in a tough spot there. They are in a tough spot there. Scott Dawson. Grenard reminds me of the Kevin Fiala. Yeah, the Wild. There are some times where a player is really, really good, but if it was just on good player or not, it would be a lot easier, but it's not. There's layers to this. It's more complicated. And sometimes you have to think about the future a little bit more. Teddy did nothing after his injury. I wonder if the injury had anything to do with it. Well, actually, that's not even true. He went 5-0 in a fill-in stint for the Saints, and then was a 500 quarterback for the Broncos. That's with the Broncos, who were not a good franchise, and after his injury where his mobility was way limited. So, I mean, anybody with anything negative to say about Teddy Bridgewater, I got no time for that, man. No time for that. 10K beers. Latavius Murray seemed like a selfless leader type. He's very, very intelligent. Very, very smart guy. And really, really understood pass protection, football, I mean, X's and O's, and was really tough and ran tough for a guy who was tall. I think that's hard to do. Mr. JSWAN, not sure how to say that. Not often talked about but wasn't it negligent that the Vikings don't draft a running back last year with how deep the running back class is? Look at guys like Kyle Monungai. Yes. Yes. And there is a case there. I mean, I like the wide receiver position in taking Ty Felton more than Cam Skattebo, even though everyone likes Cam Skattebo. I don't know that he's exceptional. He might be, he might not be. I think he's a good, whatever kind of running back. No criticism. If the Vikings had him, I think that people would really love him. But there were 5 dudes that were those mid-round picks that would have been worth it. Bashal Tutin was another one. There's quite a few that had legit speed, legit prospects, and they just didn't do it. Friends of Taz, doing the Teddy touchdown thing is just so silly. You watched, right? You watched that season. You knew how they played. They had a great defense. They had a bad offensive line. They didn't have great weapons. They played a run first, don't turn over the ball. And Adrian got all the touchdowns. I brought this stat up a million times over the time talking about Teddy, that they were the 7th best team in terms of scoring percentage. So how often they got the ball, but when they score. But statistics can be tricky because if you hand the ball to Adrian Peterson or Matt Asiata for touchdowns or whatever, then the quarterback doesn't get credit for them, but you still get credit for them as a team, right? And even if your offense didn't put up X number of points and rank wherever, if you controlled the entire game on offense because you were a methodical run, control the clock, play defense, offense, then you're scoring and you're winning, but you're not putting up huge totals. And that's what O'Connell was literally talking about last year. He was literally talking about that last year, learning how to do it that way. You're talking about the talent. Yeah. So bringing up Tom Brady in any argument is pretty silly. And Randy Moss, you're going out of your way to intentionally be ridiculous when it comes to the draft is a very, very good indicator of pure talent because you have 32 teams that are assessing your skill set and then deciding where you belong. And Randy Moss did not drop in the draft, as you know, and I know, because of a lack of talent. We all know that. And Tom Brady is one of the all-time outliers, and so is Kurt Warner, and that happens. But when you look at the quarterbacks who are in the playoffs this year, there's one outlier quarterback, and it happens, is Brock Purdy, and then everyone else is a first-round draft pick. Drake May is picked at the top of the draft because he is stupid talented. And Kyler Murray was picked at the top of the draft because he's insanely talented. His college performance was incredible and breathtaking, and he's accurate. And at the time, he had legit arm strength, and his playmaking was, almost to a Michael Vick type of level. His run impact was incredible early in his career and still matters to this point. The Arizona Cardinals were not spending the number 1 overall pick on him unless they thought he was a phenomenal, phenomenal talent. And if you just take a few minutes to watch, but I shouldn't even tell you that because in 2021, everything was on display. The playmaking, the arm talent, and some of the mistakes. Scott, do you think Gainwell signing was a sign of things to come with White? I do. I think that they were signing Gainwell and moving on from Rachaad White, which is kind of odd. Doomer KO, is Derek Carr not happening? Oh, you know what? As I was doing the rundown of, hey, what happens if they go to this, that is the one I forgot. It just seems like it's been out of sight, out of mind. It sounded to me at the combine like Derek Carr really wanted to get to Minnesota and was very excited about the idea of potentially coming back. And there's been crickets. Total crickets on Derek Carr. So yeah, that could be, if it's not Murray and it's not Geno, then maybe they start to look at the Derek Carr thing before they go with Kirk or before they go with Rodgers. The son of Beavers, the real question is how fast Johnny Munn comes back. Yes. Would like to keep Ben Sims. Curious about that. I think, how expensive is that though? Maybe they could let him go and then re-sign him. Michael Elgton Jenkins was released by the Packers. Is he any good? Oh, yes. No, he's good. Yeah, he's good. Yes. Yes, he's good. Yep. But he had a serious injury last year, and I don't know that he's a center. I think he's probably more of a left guard. But if the Vikings were interested in him as their center, I could see that as a pretty big improvement. 10K Beer's been listening to you say Aaron Rodgers is cooked since you were on 1500 ESPN. Is he still cooked? Did we even say cooked then? I don't even think we said cooked. I think we said washed. Yes, there was a discussion that I had with someone, because we used to do the hot routes bit, and I love that you've been listening for that long. We used to do the hot routes bit, and I think I asked whoever it was that was co-hosting with me, is there a chance that Kirk Cousins is a better quarterback than Aaron Rodgers right now? And we kind of looked at the numbers, and this, I think, was 2018 going into that season, and we were looking at the numbers, or maybe it was 2019 probably. And Rodgers' numbers, they dipped, and then he won 2 more MVPs. So not washed. Also, Matthew Stafford, you talk about takes that didn't work out for me because, and I'll tie this into Kyler Murray. I'll tie both of these into Kyler Murray. Matthew Stafford's statistics before he goes to the Rams are not that good. Why do you think that is? Is it because Matt Patricia was his coach? Is it because the organization was in shambles? Is it because some of the weapons were not that great? Kenny Galladay's one great season or something because they never had really a run game? Is it maybe that made a difference for Matthew Stafford? Did Matthew Stafford play differently in LA than he did in Detroit? Oh yeah, he did. Because he wasn't trying to play hero all the time. That sounds familiar. And with Aaron Rodgers, by the end, the offense that Mike McCarthy was running was kind of washed out of the league. So his numbers went down. Their receiving wasn't as good. And then they get healthy at the receiver position. Devontae Adams, it was very good, of course. And because there was a real transition there from Jordy to Devontae Adams. And they bring in LaFleur, and he's running play actions, and he's got Rodgers playing efficiently, and he wins 2 MVPs. Also, they were the most favorable seasons probably of all time for passing before the league figured out that they can't try to run the Seattle single high defense. And then the league changed again. So circumstances has a lot to do with success at the quarterback position, I think, is the lesson there. Isn't it? I believe it is. Doomer KO, not convinced we're ever getting a punt off. I know. And we'll see. Tom says Vikings officially on Jeremiah Love watch. Commanders, Chiefs, and Saints all sign running backs. Maybe. I don't know how he gets to 18, but I also can't say for sure that he doesn't. Or if he gets to a certain number, would you trade up? I think that Daniel Jeremiah is very good at predicting what the Vikings are going to do and has a good eye on that. So it might be something that they consider. I don't know. If they did, it would be really fun. I will say that. It would be really fun if they got Jeremiah Love. And even though I would come on and say, just like last year, what happened last year was a lot of the Vikings moves, I would be saying, this might not be the most efficient thing to do, but look, if it works, it's going to be amazing. And some did and some didn't. That's how I would view Jeremiah Love is, yeah, this might not be the most efficient thing to do, trading up to get him, but if it works, it's going to be crazy. Scott says drafting Sadiq would also fill the running back too. Yeah, he's built like an RB2, that's for sure. He is definitely built like a running back, but he can catch, man. He's got hands. I like Sadiq a lot. I don't like him as, hey, just throw him in and make him do everything right away. Yes, I'm aware that Jamarcus Russell was the number 1 overall pick. What I said was it's indicative of talent. Would you like to go together with me to YouTube and watch Jamarcus Russell in college? You will have your eyes fall out of your freaking skull in terms of his talent. There was a video going around the social media the other day of just Jamarcus, this one game Jamarcus played, and the throws that he made, indicative of talent, not indicative of success all the time. It is actually indicative of success, but it's not perfect 1-to-1. Definitely not 1-to-1. Scott, what would you give the percentage of chance they sign White? I've continued to podcast this deep into the night because I thought they might. Can we get a Twitter check? I'm going to get a Twitter check. What's going on over on Twitter? Have all the insiders given up? Let's find out. Let's find out what they're doing. What are you insiders doing? Oh, Alohi Gilman. There's a guy who is now off. Man, the safeties. The safeties are getting paid. Here I was thinking, I'm going to tell my audience about this guy, Alohi Gilman, that nobody knows about. And then they're going to be like, thanks, Purple Insider, for telling me about this random safety that's better than everyone thinks. And then the Chiefs sign him to a big contract, 3 years, $25 million. I thought there was a real chance the Vikings would get him. So there you go. There's one of the guys I had on my list off of the board. So if you're listening to the replay and you made it tape to tape all the way to this point, you heard Alohi Gilman is a great target to Alohi Gilman goes somewhere else. Who else? Anybody else doing anything? A random linebacker for the Packers. Teams that did not sign an outside free agent: Eagles, Broncos, Jaguars, Seahawks, and Packers. And the Vikings got one guy for $8 million over 2 years. Dowdle going to the Steelers. He was never really a guy for me. Raiders re-signed. Wait, they signed a kicker? Don't they have Daniel Carlson? That's a good deal for J.K. Dobbins, and this is the hard part. It's a 2 year, $16 million. This is the hard part. It's like these running backs are getting some money this year. So the Vikings, I don't know how much you want to play in there. And maybe Rachaad White slips through the cracks. That's kind of where we're at right now. So we will have to wait and see. But now that Gilman's off the board, I am not very confident that more is going to happen. Let me bring the chat back up here. This evening. Ogre Muffin. That's a new one. We should just move up and package 18 Grenard or Addison. Grenard could be involved in that. Now, if you traded, I still don't love it. I still like the idea of more players, because when I look at the way that they've drafted lately, it's always, we really need this guy. We really need that guy. We really need Donovan Jackson. We really need Jordan Addison. We really need Dallas Turner. And all those guys can play. But you sacrificed more players that you need when you weren't really robust in your amount of draft capital. That's the issue from where they're at right now is, do they have a future roster if they keep trading up and trading up and trading up? Scott, if the Vikings signed a guy like White, but Love was still somehow there, what do you predict they would do? I mean, if White wouldn't preclude you from signing someone as good as Jeremiah Love or drafting someone as talented. If he drops into the middle of the first round, this conversation changes. I'm just assuming that he's going to go very high. I mean, now you guys in the chat are arguing about Christian Ponder. How did that happen? That might mean it's time to call it a night. Yeah, KFT Pierre had good numbers by PFF this year. He played as a rotational player or a fill-in player and was very solid, and he's very experienced. And my guess, if he's hung around the league this long, is that he's good at special teams and he's probably very smart. That would be my guess. If the new coach, Gerald Alexander, who came over from Pittsburgh, and Flores had their eye on him in free agency, that means he's smart. I'm just going to take a guess. Cause and effect. Why are people scared to take a chance on Kyler? It's a win-win, cheap contract for a chance at getting him at his absolute best. Let's stop being judgmental. Your thoughts? My thought is that it's going to take a little while if and when that happens, for people to buy into Kyler Murray, for Vikings fans to buy into Kyler Murray. I think once you see it, and try reading the entire chat. Man, you guys are tough. I'm only talking and reading. Okay, never mind. Try doing this and reading every single word. Anyway, I actually have to trust you guys a lot of times, because I'll start reading a comment and be like, I hope it's going in a good direction. If the guy who's in there says, go Pack go, I can spot that. But a lot of times I just know that most of you are rational people, and I'm going to read it even if I haven't had a chance to read it first, because I'm in the middle of talking. But when are they going to sign players is a good question. But let me finish the first one, about the Kyler Murray stuff. I think it's going to be hard for Vikings fans at first, if they do it, to kind of look at this thing and say, yeah, I could see it. Because Murray is coming from a low point in his career to some extent. I thought in his 5 games, he played mostly well, and his really terrible game was against the Super Bowl champion defense that destroyed everyone. But this is not the high point of Kyler Murray's career. And I don't think that he's a likable quarterback in terms of, he's not going to come out and be super energetic and really loud and very in your face, the way that JJ McCarthy is with his enthusiasm. So that might take some getting used to. It's a little bit like Sam Darnold in that way, where Darnold was very quiet and didn't have a lot to say when he first got here. And I also think that, people haven't seen a lot of this guy play and go on reputation. But if he were to come out in week 1 and throw for 260 yards and 120 of them go to Justin Jefferson, and then run for another 50 yards and they win 27-20 over the Chicago Bears, I think it would change very quickly. So it'll really be dictated on the results. I think there's going to be skepticism. If they do it on Wednesday, there will be skepticism from Vikings fans, from most Vikings fans. Is this a good idea? Is this really going to work? And we'll talk about that a lot if it happens. And then once you see him play in a Vikings uniform, if the first impression is strong, then people will just be on board. That would be my guess. But there's always going to be those who are kind of sticking to there were so many people who didn't even want Sam Darnold to succeed because they were so stuck on the JJ thing. So it's a hard one to move on from. Can we discuss the Burrow trades? It's 10 o'clock. We need to discuss me getting some food, because it's after 10 o'clock and we're on to 3 hours and 20 minutes of live streaming, and I haven't eaten. And I don't have Diet Dr. Pepper. I only have Diet Coke. But no, I don't think we can discuss Joe Burrow trades. I just don't think it's happening. Don't think it's happening. No, KFT, no, is, no, whoever he plays for, it's going to be $1.3 million. It's not going to be, there's no other contract because Arizona is playing him. Friends of Taz, I truly don't understand why Christian Ponder would be a part of the conversation. I mean, Christian Ponder was a failure as their quarterback. He just did not really ever, outside of a couple of games, show that he could be a long-term quarterback option for them. And he played a great game to get them into the playoffs in 2012. And who knows if he had stayed healthy, if they win the next game, but I didn't think that there was much up for debate about that history. And I think that I know a little about it. Tyrone, will KOC change the offense with Murray? Something he's reluctant to do. I think it's a little mythology that he's reluctant to do that. I think he was reluctant to do that. I think that there have been a couple of situations where he needed to do more than he thought he needed to do, like with Dobbs or with Carson Wentz. But it's very clear when you look at how different the offense was with McCarthy in the second half of the season, when McCarthy played better. And I also think that if you're talking about, if you're doing it, then you've thought about it. If you're willing to do it and you're willing to bring him here, you're not bringing him here and being like, oh man, now what do we do? Just have him run the offense. I think we need to give some credit to them as like NFL coaches who have succeeded. But I do think it's an issue. It's how are you going to is really more of the question. Not can you, but how are you going to? And how much do you really need? And how much is just people's impression of Kyler Murray? Because there are times where he doesn't see the middle of the field. And then there's a lot of times where rhythm and timing, there's a ton of throws on his tape that are perfectly accurate rhythm and timing. So I'm not sure that is an issue that they will need to figure out of how much does need to be changed. And a lot of that will be just talking to him, I think. Jerry, the way that the offseason is unfolded, what do you think of the chances Brzezinski becomes the GM? I think the chances are pretty good he becomes the GM. I think that Rob has such a great amount of cachet with the ownership and trust from the ownership. And that's what you need first, is you need trust from the ownership that you are going to guide this franchise with the long-term in mind for many years to come, and also with an eye on continuing to be competitive and, being the guardrails, but also being, somebody who can work with a lot of different types of people, who knows a lot of different types of people, who's earned it over many, many years. I would advocate for it. And I would I say that, if they do it, that this is a really good thing for the organization. Nobody knows better the Viking culture, the history, all those types of things, like what they're trying to achieve, how they need to get there, the quarterback thing. He knows all that inside and out. Every person in the building, bring in someone new's fine if they want to, if they like someone else. But I think Brzezinski would be a good choice. So, okay. Well, we've made it a really long way and not a lot has happened. And that is unfortunate because I did expect more to happen. Tomorrow, we will live stream again. And then it seems that on Wednesday, the Vikings will have a quarterback, or at least clarity on the quarterback position, but that might not be true. There might be more time for Murray. There might be more time for Geno Smith, but I think that there's probably been enough winking at each other and whispering and sending notes across the classroom for all the quarterbacks to have a pretty good sense of where they're going when they get released. And Wednesday should be that day. So we'll see what happens. But I promised every night live streaming and answering your questions and reacting to whatever goes on. If there is big breaking news, then I will be here for an emergency podcast whenever it happens. If it happens a half an hour from now, and I've got to run back into the studio and break down some move. It's happened before where I think the Jordan Mason trade happened at like 11 o'clock at night. So if it happens right after I shut this down, I will be back. But for now, I'm going to go and start working on my written recap and reaction to everything that happened today. And we will talk to you all. At least the plan is at some point tomorrow. If nothing major happens that requires an immediate reaction, then tomorrow, we'll plan on tomorrow evening, as I normally would do. So, it was an interesting day of discussion, but not a whole lot actually moving and shaking. We'll see what happens tomorrow. The free agency is young. It's just day one, everybody. The offseason has a long way to go. So, thank you all for your time. And